AGATHA RAISIN by MC Beaton. Dramatised for radio by David Semple. Starring Penelope Keith as Agatha. Episode 1. The Curious Curate.
Mrs. Raisin.
Oh, Reverend Bloxby, I'm so sorry I let you down with the Harvest Festival.
Not to worry. Mrs. Dougal did her best with the root vegetables, despite all her recent surgery. Now, the others are waiting for you in the drawing room.
Mrs. Wendell, I couldn't trouble you to pass round the cream horns, could I?
I'll do my best, Mrs. Bloxby, but I do have tennis elbow and I'm lactose intolerant.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, hello.
Mrs. Bloxby. Yes. I've just been confessing my sins to your husband.
Oh, no wonder you're so late. No, it hasn't started yet. Mrs. Wendell, could you squeeze up and make room for Mrs. Raisin?
I'll try, but my left leg is playing up. I think it's deep vein thrombosis.
Right, everyone, it's nearly time. Where's the remote control?
There.
Oh, it's so exciting, our little village on the television.
Yes, Mrs. Beccarelli. It's just a pity about the circumstances.
I expect it's all a bit old hat to you, Mrs. Raisin. You must have been on television before with all your years in public relations.
Once or twice, but I gave it up when television became cheap.
Shush! It's starting.
And in tonight's Crime Time UK, we're off to Carsley, the perfect postcard village. But look up close, and it's not such a pretty picture. We spoke to the vicar of Carsley, the Reverend Alfred Bloxby.
Well, this has always been a very peaceful place. Of course, it's less so now with all the incomers coming in, which is why a curate was appointed to assist me with my duties.
Tristan Labelle, 23 years old when he moved to Carsley, and was murdered.
Oh, dear, poor little poppet.
Such a sad loss.
At 3 a.m. on Friday the 13th of September, Tristan Labelle was stabbed in the heart with an antique letter opener. At the time, he was checking parish donations when someone came into the room and disturbed him.
He was a very conscientious young man, which is why he was working so late. We found him here lying in a sea of money, but not a penny was taken.
Your husband looks so nice on the television.
Yes, it totally gets rid of his crow's feet.
Oh dear, it's me.
Oh, Tristan was so popular. He was standing room only when he took a service. In fact, I think Alf was a little bit jealous of... I don't mean that he was...
And did you hear anything on the night of the attack?
No, but I do sleep with earplugs. Alf has a tendency to snore. And besides, you often hear groups of men in the churchyard. I think they must be badger watching or something. I'm sure it's all perfectly innocent.
Oh, look who it is now.
He was so charismatic. I mean, whether he was raising money for the church roof or famine relief, he knew how to charm people into giving everything they could. And he was a breath of fresh air in the pulpit. I mean, compared to some of the sermons we're used to.
Mrs. Raisin!
No. I didn't mean your husband. I was thinking of other churches.
Oh, do be quiet. It's James Lacey.
Well, on the night in question, I was driving home from a regimental dinner, and I happened to go by the churchyard about 2 a.m. And I thought I saw someone lurking behind this rather fine 18th century obelisk. I wondered if I should go and investigate. Then thought the better of it. A decision that will haunt me till the end of my days.
James Lacey, couldn't you just smother him in whipped cream and lick it off slowly?
I thought you were lactose intolerant.
I'm now crossing the churchyard to the house where Tristan lived with his landlady, Maria Beccarelli.
Oh,
Mrs. Beccarelli.
He was a good boy. He was a kind boy. He used to tell me all his plans, but now it seems none of them will come true.
Were you in the Carsley area on the 13th of September? Perhaps you were in the woods, badger watching. Please phone Crime Time on...
Oh dear, I do hope they get some calls.
They will, Mrs. Bloxby. Everyone who's ever heard of Carsley will ring up. They ignore all the police signs and the calls for witnesses, but as soon as it's on the telly, they suddenly remember they saw something.
Well, That's one less eligible bachelor. Where do we go now to find interesting single men?
You could always become a prison visitor.
You're a fine one to talk. You seem to spend all day, every day, sniffing after James Lacey. Why don't you move out of the way and let someone else have a go?
Have a go? He's a human being, not a dodgem car. And the reason I spend so much time with him is to protect him from harpies like you.
Oh, Mrs. Raisin, do not push me. I'm already on mood stabilizers.
Really? Pity they chose such a rotten mood to stabilise.
Ladies, please. This is meant to be a solemn occasion.
That's all right. I'm going out for some fresh air and a cigarette.
Are you still smoking? I thought you'd given up.
I can't afford to. It's the one thing that's keeping me healthy.
I'm not sure that I follow.
Well, now that it's banned in every public place, I'm constantly running in and out of restaurants. I've never had so much fresh air and exercise.
Mrs. Wendell's remarks about James, they rather touched a raw nerve, didn't they?
Mrs. Bloxby, do your eyes ever get tired from seeing into people's souls?
I don't have to squint too hard to see into yours, Mrs. Raisin. But I thought you and James were getting on so well. Of course, the one thing that might bring you closer together is this murder investigation.
Mrs. Bloxby, you usually tell me to leave that to the police.
Oh, well, perhaps you should, but the police don't seem to be getting very far, and I admit, if it were cleared up, my life would be a lot easier.
Why's that?
Well, I don't think anyone really believes that Alf did something terrible to Tristan, but people do gossip. And Alf has become so grumpy because of it. It's as though he's a different person. If they could only find out who did this, I could feel as though I was getting my husband back.
It's all right, Chivers. The chef hasn't forgotten you. Now, there's poached salmon with cream and a little bit of lamb's liver from yesterday. Your usual table in the corner, I presume? Now, what'll I have? Oh, I'll just shove something in the microwave. Hold on, I'm coming. Mind, please, Chivers.
Oh, there, Agatha.
Phil, come in.
Don't mind if I do. It's a bit nippy out there.
Well, I'm honoured. I thought you'd be up to your eyeballs with the investigation.
TV appeal hasn't done much. Though James Lacey has received several proposals on marriage.
Would you like me to put my ear to the ground to see if I can discover anything?
No, that is exactly what I don't want. I've come here to beg you for once in your life not to interfere in police business.
Bill, you always do this to me.
So what?
Tell me not to get involved, then you'll pop round in a week and ask me if I've heard anything.
Oh, really? Well, I guess it's what we criminologists call a pattern of offending behaviour.
Hold on. I'm coming.
James, are you busy?
No, Agatha, I was standing here waiting for you. The Hoover in my hand is just a prop.
Are you doing housework? I thought you did it last week.
Well, you know, to keep a place in apple pie order, you have to do it at least once a millennium. Oh, do come in. And please tread some mud into the carpet.
It's about the murder investigation.
Oh, yeah. Terrible business. I've just been watching the news.
Bill Wong says we're not to get involved.
Sound advice. Well done, Bill.
So we're getting involved.
What?
Sometimes when a policeman says no, he really means yes.
Remind me never to get into a car with you. Sometimes a red light really means go.
He must know there's something going on, but he doesn't want us to get hurt.
Because I'm told being stabbed with a paper knife hurts quite a lot. Now look, why don't we leave this whole business to the police? May as well get some value for our council tax. And I can get on with writing my book, and you can get on with your, with your cat.
Thank you so much for that, James. Though, I suppose you have a point. Maybe I'm just doing this because I'm bored.
I didn't say that.
The thing is, Tristan used to give us all so many things to do. When he was alive, he was always organising fundraising and charity events. What will the single women of Carsley get up to now?
Hold on.
Hello, Hello there, James. Now, I hope you don't mind, but I've made you a rather nice lamb casserole.
Mrs. Wendell, you really shouldn't.
Now, can you take it from me? I'm not good at holding hot things. I've got that condition, I don't know what it's called, but Catherine Zeta-Jones has got it.
Oh, right.
Well, aren't you going to offer me a coffee? Oh, Mrs. Raisin seems to have wandered in.
Good Lord, so she has. I must put up a bigger fence between our houses.
Mrs. Wendell, lovely to see you. And you brought a mutton casserole.
Lamb casserole.
So hard to tell. Well, shall I nip home and get a pudding? How about gooseberry fool?
That's quite all right. I won't be staying. James, I'll drop by sometime when Mrs. Raisin's not here. I'm sure she must have to leave eventually.
Thanks. Good God. Will I forever be pursued by women with hot pots?
Well, there's one way to escape them.
Oh, yes.
Let's go investigating.
You know, there's nothing quite so peaceful as an English churchyard.
Yes, except when people are being murdered in them. So, where did you see this mysterious figure?
It was just about here. Right behind this tombstone.
Very good place to lurk. Sacred to the memory of John Bandiscombe. In death do our dreams become smoke. Oh, that reminds me, must have a ciggy.
Those anti-smoking campaigns are worth every penny. Well, you've got a very clear view of the house where Tristan was staying, and of the vicarage. But I want to know why he got out of his bed in the middle of the night to go and check donations.
Well, perhaps he was a light sleeper.
Or perhaps he was helping himself to church funds.
No, not Tristan. Surely not.
No, of course not. He didn't have a striped jersey or a large sack with swag written on it.
James, I knew him.
Well, you think you did, but isn't it possible that the reason the police are getting nowhere is that no one in the village believes anything bad about Tristan?
Such as?
Such as perhaps his nocturnal visit was to get some money for a quick getaway. But whatever he was trying to get away from, somehow caught up with him.
No, I still don't believe that.
Agatha, do you mind not stubbing your cigarette on somebody's headstone?
Well, you know what they say. Ashes to ashes.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Raisin. Oh, Mr. Lacey. Fancy seeing you two.
We were wondering if we could have a word with you.
Of course. Let's go home and put the kettle on.
Have you been doing your rounds, Mrs. Bloxby? Oh, this parish does keep you busy.
Oh, well, to tell you the truth, I just came out for some fresh air. My husband is in one of his moods at the moment.
Thank goodness you're here, Margaret. I've just seen that dreadful woman having a cigarette in the churchyard.
That dreadful woman's now having a cigarette in your living room.
Oh, sorry. No, I didn't mean you. No, there's a Romany woman keeps calling round with lucky white heather.
You should buy some. Right now you need all the luck you can get.
Oh, dear. I do apologise for my husband.
We really want to talk about Tristan.
Oh, yes?
We have a theory, and it is just a theory, that Tristan might have occasionally taken things that didn't belong to him.
I see. So the cat's out of the bag, then, is it?
Oh, there's a cat in a bag, is there?
Well, yes, there's a bag, at least. My rather shabby handbag. You see, whenever Tristan had come round to visit, I'd often notice there was money missing from my purse afterwards. Not huge amounts, £1 here, £1 there, but... Well, Alf and I aren't very well off, so we do tend to notice that sort of thing.
But, Mrs. Bloxby, why would he go to all the risk of exposure for the price of a Scotch egg?
Oh, you tell me, Mrs. Raisin. At the time, I thought I was imagining things, but now I wonder, did we have a very damaged person living amongst us?
So perhaps the divine Tristan did have a dark side.
Well, don't say that to Mrs. Beccarelli.
Why not?
Because she worshipped him, from his tousle blonde hair to his Tommy Hilfiger trainers.
Don't worry, I shall tiptoe around the subject of my very fashionable hush puppies.
Mrs. Beccarelli.
Oh, it's you two. I knew you would come. Come in. Come in.
Thank you.
I was looking at these photographs of Tristan. He's such a lovely boy. Please, sit down.
Thank you. May we have a look?
Of course. This is the tug of war he did for the old people's home. He made over £2,000 for them.
Oh, now that's what I call money for old rope.
This is the church where he worked in London. They were so sorry to see him go.
I can imagine. It's such an interesting face, Tristan. Kind of face that looks as if it's got a story to tell.
Of course. And wouldn't you love to know what the story was? Huh?
I'm sorry?
You too want to know about his murder, don't you? I knew you would come. But I have decided. His secrets are staying with me.
Mrs. Beccarelli, we're trying to make sure that what happened to Tristan doesn't happen again. Now, if you could just tell us...
No more talking, please. It upsets me.
Fine. May I use your bathroom before we leave?
Of course you can. It's at the top of the stairs.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Lacey, when are you going to make an honest woman of Mrs. Raisen?
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I think you've got the wrong end of the stick there.
I see the way you look at her. I know she is special to you, and I know how hard it is for you to say your feelings.
I haven't got any feelings. Well, I mean, obviously, I have some, but just not those sort of feelings.
Oh, darling, you don't want to go through your life all alone. Don't wait till it's too late. Like about Tristan.
No, yes. Speaking of Tristan, did he ever...
No, Mr. Lacey, no more questions. Here, I give you something. For you and Mrs. Raisen.
Goodness. Is this homemade?
It is. Elderflower wine. It was a very good year this year. I don't drink so much anymore. It's too strong for me. But you and Mrs. Raisen will enjoy it.
Homemade wine? What's that made of?
Nothing.
Well, I may as well have it. I'm fresh out of insect repellent.
Did you manage to find anything in Tristram's room? I assume you dropped in on your way to the lavatory?
She's locked the door to stop any skeletons escaping. Did you get anywhere?
Afraid not. It's like talking to a brick wall. A rather nice moss-covered Italiante wall.
But there was something strange in one of those photos.
Oh, the tug-of-war, yes. Very ill-disciplined, no sense of strategy.
Not that. The leaving party at his old church. Did you recognise the man standing next to him?
No. Should I have done?
You should if you read the Daily Telegraph. That was Richard Bincer.
What a savoury snacks millionaire who's now ruining our railways.
The very same. I've done some PR work for Bincer's Crisps. I might just be able to wangle a meeting with him.
Why? You having to wangle a few cheese football?
I think he may know something.
What? Because he once stood next to Tristan 3 years ago?
May I remind you, Bill Wong once said I have an almost psychic ability to jump to the right conclusion.
Yes, except when you jump to the wrong one. We'll draw a discreet veil over that.
No, I'm afraid Mr. Bincer simply can't see you today because he's far too busy.
We made an appointment. We have travelled 100 miles to be here. He has no right to stand us up.
I'm sorry you feel that way, but Mr. Bincer is an extremely busy man.
Oh, I know. Those peanuts don't dry roast themselves.
Why don't you give him this piece of paper? He might just see things in a different light.
If you wish to send a letter, you will find our address listed in the telephone directory.
Oh, for heaven's sake, why can't you just give it to him?
For several reasons, not least of which is security.
Listen, dear, if we wanted to hurt your boss, we could just wring your scrawny neck and kick the door down.
Really? Well, you might find my neck a little tougher than you think.
Oh, Mrs. Raisin and Lacey, so glad you could make it. It's all right, Miss Bartle. The Tasmanian meeting's been cancelled. Come this way, please. Do have a seat.
Thank you.
So, you want to know about Tristan, do you?
That is correct.
We understand you knew him, briefly.
Maybe I did. But is this of any concern to you? Who are you exactly?
We are private investigators, hired by Tristan's former employer.
May I see your licence?
It's pending.
Oh, I see. So you're nosy Parkers. Well, at least you're not rummaging in my bins. I met Tristan LaBelle on 3 occasions. He managed to charm his way past my secretary. As you can see, that takes quite a lot of charm. And 2 years ago, he invited me to donate money to a youth club he was setting up.
He was rather good at getting other people's money.
No, he didn't get much from me. Only 5,000 pin money, really.
That's an awfully expensive pin.
So is there a youth club in South London with your name on it?
No, there isn't. Tristan had a habit of asking for money for projects that never materialised. And when I learned he was leaving without having set up the club, I asked for my money back.
And what happened?
I got my money back.
Do you have a record of that?
No, of course not. There's never going to be a colouring note. Here's the money I tried to con you out of. It came through the post, £150 notes in a plain brown envelope. Now, if you'll forgive me, I have a business to run. And I imagine you have bring and buy sales to organise.
Well, I think it was him. A snake in a pinstripe suit.
As usual, you are tearing ahead without a shred of evidence.
No one gets to be a millionaire by being nice to people.
I've never really thought of you as a class war activist. And when you get back to your £500,000 cottage, will you be heating up the tin bath in front of the fire tonight?
I earned every penny of my money fair and square, but I bet you can't say the same for Richard Bincer. Let's try and dig some dirt on him.
Some of us have other things to do. It's just finishing off our books.
Oh, you're not still wittering on about that, are you? Admit it. It's never going to be written.
Agatha, my book is almost complete. Which is just as well as it's going to be published next year.
Why didn't you tell me you'd found a publisher?
I started to tell you a while ago, and you somehow changed the subject to speed cameras, congestion charging, and things you'd like to do to traffic wardens.
But I should have been the first to know. I can organise a launch party.
Don't need a launch party. It's a book about the Peninsular War. It'll sell 200 copies to colonels in Tunbridge Wells.
Well, if you're going to think small, I could get the press and a sprinkling of celebrities.
Who?
I don't know. The cast of Dad's Army?
Wrong war, wrong century, and most of them are dead.
I do wish people would turn off their phones on the train.
That'll be your phone, Agatha.
Oh. Hello?
Like anything from the buffet, sir?
When did that happen?
Well, I never say no to a muffin.
Yes, of course.
Do you like anything else for that, sir?
For how long?
No, thanks.
That'll be 125.
We'll be there in half an hour.
You are.
Thank you, sir.
That was Mrs. Bloxby. Mrs. Beccarelli has gone missing. Last seen mushroom picking in the woods. So, I'm going to organise a search party.
Which celebrities are you going to have at your search party, Lulu?
Okay, everybody, thank you for coming. We're looking for anything at all belonging to Mrs. Beccarelli. Her basket, her car keys, anything that can help us trace her steps. So, if we could all hold hands facing the woods.
Excuse me, Mrs. Raisin.
Yes, Mrs. Bloxby.
If we're going to hold hands, should it be boy-girl, boy-girl?
It's not a dinner party.
Is it really necessary to join hands?
The police won't get involved for 24 hours, so we need to be every bit as thorough as they would. Okay, everybody. Now, hold tight. Off we go.
Oh, goodness. Mr. Lacey, it's just like one of your history walks, only with a missing person and without the history.
Well, yes, quite. Everyone stop.
What?
Don't look. I'm afraid it's a dead body.
How do you know?
The feet sticking out of the ground are a bit of a giveaway.
Hello?
Morning, Reverend Bloxby.
Ah, it's you.
Is your wife in?
Let us go and see. Margaret.
Yes?
The appalling Agatha is here again.
And the appalling Agatha is well within earshot.
Ah, Mrs. Raisin, sorry.
Mrs. Raisin. Oh, come through to the kitchen, please. Talk to you later, Al.
It's nice to get away from the tabloid press. I'm being pursued by a snarling pack of journalists at the moment.
We hardly dare answer the door these days. I must pour you a cup of tea.
No, please sit down. I'll do it.
Oh, you're so kind.
I can't remember if you have sugar.
Not usually, but I'll have 3 spoons, please. I need the energy. I've been talking to Mrs. Wendell. She says the police were asking about Alf's whereabouts when Mrs. Beccarelli went missing. I keep thinking they're going to take him in to help with their inquiries.
You mustn't worry. There's nothing anyone can do.
Oh, I know. Do you know what I usually do when I'm upset?
Go on, tell me.
I clean the house. I find it takes my mind off things.
Well, you must have a wretched life. Your house is spotless.
I don't just clean. I scrub behind the fridge. I polish the silver. But now I'm running out of silverware to polish. Oh, Mrs. Raisin, I'm sure they're going to take Alf away from me.
But he didn't do it, Mrs. Bloxby.
There are quite a few people in prison who didn't do it.
Can you tell us what the body looked like when you found it?
Oh, for goodness sake, sod off! Out of the way, Chivers. I have a bucket of something for the next reptile who rings the doorbell.
Pass my number out of the door.
Right!
Agatha, what was that for?
Oh, James, I'm sorry. I thought you were the Daily Mirror.
Oh, I see. I'll never get the hang of you media types.
Come in, let's get you dry.
I came to get away from the press pack. I see you're under siege, too.
Well, with 2 murders in a month, it's hardly worth their going back to London. Here, have a towel.
Oh, hello, Chivers. I won't stroke you. I've just had a cold shower.
I know what'll warm you up. Mrs. Beccarelli's homemade wine.
Is there no way to go to get away from this bedlam?
Well, the back bedroom might be quieter.
Oh,
Oh, come on. What? Bring the bottle.
Oh, right. This really is rather good, you know. You should try some.
James, I am trying to stay focused on the task in hand.
I'll stay focused on the glass in hand.
Now look, our number 1 suspect is still Richard Bincer.
Why is that? He seemed a nice enough chap.
No one runs a multi-million-pound snack empire by being a nice chap.
Honestly, Aggie, you're clutching at cheese straw.
Oh.
Do you hear that, Agatha? I made a joke.
I did hear, yes.
Why didn't you laugh?
Because I didn't want to intrude upon your private grief.
Well, what are we going to do then? Rub our faces in boot polish and break into Bincer's office?
He'll have closed-circuit TV cameras. It'd be like an episode of the black and white minstrel show.
I remember that. I'd walk 1,000,000 miles for one of your smiles, Aggie.
You kissed me.
Yeah. I'm terribly sorry. Slip of the tongue.
There's no need to apologise.
Right, well, I must take off my clothes. I must go and put on dry clothes.
James, where are you off to?
Sorry, I do need a change of outfit, and I don't think any of yours will suit me. Sorry, Chivers!
Did you see that, Chivers? Well, quite a busy month it's becoming. 2 murders and a drunken kiss.
In Agatha Raisin, Penelope Keith starred as Agatha, and Malcolm Sinclair was James. Richard Bincer was played by Nikki Henson, Mrs. Bloxby by Liza Sadovy, and D.C. Wong by Stephen Hogan, with Tina Gray as Mrs. Wendell and Ella Smith as Miss Partle. Agatha Raisin was dramatised by David Semple from the novel by M.C. Beaton, and the producer was Carol Smith. Agatha Raisin by M.C. Beaton, dramatised for radio by David Semple, starring Penelope Keith as Agatha. Episode 2, Duck and Cover.
Out of the way, Chivers. I enjoy a fry-up, but I draw the line at crispy fried cat. Hello?
Aggie, it's me, surprise, surprise.
Roy! What are you doing up so early? It's not even 10 o'clock yet.
Well, I've had sleepless nights worrying about you. It was on TV last night, another murder in your village.
I know. First the local curate, then his landlady. It won't do much for property prices.
So, Miss Marple, who do you think did it?
I really don't know. Tristan, that's the curate who was killed, was very good at getting money out of people. So that's a possible motive.
Well, they do say it's the root of all evil. Anyway, you haven't asked me what I'm up to at the moment.
You don't need to ask Mount Vesuvius for an eruption.
I'm a television producer.
Oh, yes. Who are you working for?
I'm a freelancer.
Oh, I see. No one will have you.
Actually, I have several BAFTA-winning programs in the pipeline. Oh, now, here's a thought. Why don't I make a drama documentary about Carsley? And we can call it, The Village of Death.
Oh, Roy, please. No.
No, it'll be tasteful. There'll be very little nudity. Now, who can we get to play you? Oh, I know. Judi Dench.
Why can't I play myself?
Don't be silly. You'd be far too wooden. Besides, if we can get Dame Judy, it has a touch of class.
Roy, it isn't funny. I actually saw the dead woman's legs sticking out of a shallow grave.
Were they good legs?
I don't know. Why?
Joanna Lumley. Not much of a part, but she can't be choosy at her age.
Roy, how can you be so insensitive?
I had the best teacher in the world.
Oh, I do have one other bit of news.
Oh, yes.
You remember James Lacey, who lives next door?
Oh, yes. 6'2" with eyes of blue and a dimple on his chin.
He kissed me.
Ah, you lucky devil.
We were discussing the case, and he just sort of puckered up. Mind you, he had half a bottle of homemade wine.
Well, that explains it. You have enough to drink, and anybody becomes attractive.
Thank you, Roy. Oh, I've got to go. The doorbell's ringing, and my breakfast's on fire.
Serves you right.
Hang on a minute. James.
Hello, Aggie.
Hang on a sec. My sausages are smoking.
Well, tell them to stop. It's a terrible habit.
Oh, dear. Well, I won't get any Michelin stars this morning.
No, but you can always find work at a crematorium.
Are you here for a reason or just to lower my self-esteem?
Mrs. Bloxby was on the phone, looking for volunteers to clean up the village. The tabloid press have left it in a bit of a mess.
I'll be round when I've buried my breakfast. Anything else?
And I've been taking a closer look at our #1 suspect, Richard Binzer.
Yes.
And I no longer suspect him.
Because?
Well, last year he donated $250,000 to charity, so if Tristan did con him out of a few thousand, it couldn't have hurt that much.
Never underestimate the sheer vindictiveness of the super-rich.
And I've been getting you with the Karl Marx of the Cotswolds.
Was there anything else, James?
No.
You don't remember anything about last night?
Not a lot. Mrs. Beccarelli's wine was rather strong stuff. I do hope I didn't make a fool of myself.
Not exactly.
Oh, good. I seem to remember singing. I do hope I didn't frighten Chivers.
You did a bit more than singing. In fact, at one point, you actually...
I'll get that. Bill Wong.
Well, my two favourite detectives, Cagney and James Lacey.
Bill, why are you giving me that suspicious look? I've not done anything wrong.
Innocent as a lamb in springtime, are we? Well, I have in my hand a piece of paper.
No, where have I heard that before?
It's a fax we received from a Mr. Richard Binzer. Ever heard of him?
The name rings a vague bell. Have you, James?
Possibly. Not quite sure if I can place him.
Well, that's funny. Because two people met him in his office yesterday, and he encloses a picture taken from a CCTV.
Oh, it's us.
Yes, I think I can place him now.
Mr. Binzer says he's happy to cooperate with the police, but he doesn't appreciate busybodies, and his legal team are prepared to take action.
Bill, did you know he gave £5,000 to Tristan to set up a youth club?
Yes, I knew that.
And Tristan pocketed the cash?
I'm well aware of that, too. But I also know he then returned it.
We've only got Binzer's word for that.
Yes, and Binzer is an extremely powerful man.
You're not seriously saying you're scared of him.
I'm saying that as well as solving this murder, I have to make sure no one else gets killed or harassed. And if you two are quite so keen on helping out, why not go and join Mrs. Bloxby's litter patrol?
Good idea. Let's gather some rubbish. I'll have that fax.
Give me that. I've nothing else to say, except that your house stinks, and it's time you got a smoke alarm.
Well, that's us off his Christmas card list.
We'll make up and be friends again. We always do.
Do you want to cook yourself something decent?
No, I'll have my usual breakfast. Fags and fingernails.
Oh, my dear Mrs. Wendell, thank you so much for coming to help.
Always happy to oblige, Mrs. Bloxby. I'm not one of those villagers who waltzes in and expects everything done for them, and I'm not afraid of hard graft.
Oh, it's a depressing sight. 18th century graves strewn with kebab wrappers.
Yes, though I'm not sure I can pick them up. I do suffer from vertigo.
Who would have thought a handful of journalists could make such a mess?
Good morning.
Oh, look. It's Colonel Lacey.
Oh, yes. And he's brought his shadow. It must be a novelty for her, seeing manual labour. Oh, dear, I've broken my fingernail.
Mrs. Bloxby? Oh. 2 more volunteer bin men for you.
Oh, you are kind, Mrs. Raisin. Here, have a bin liner. Actually, may I split you up? If you and I do the churchyard, Mrs. Wendell, could you and James do the village green?
Oh.
All the wreaths have been knocked off the war memorial. It looks awful.
Oh, yes, we'll make a marvellous team. You see, I suffer terribly from vertigo, but if James does all the bending over, then I can point out where things go.
Oh, right. So I'll see you for lunch, Agatha.
1 o'clock sharp.
And I'll make sure he works up quite an appetite. Come along, James.
Oh, I can't bear to see the village like this. It's like an old friend covered in cuts and bruises.
Yes. Is there anything you wanted to talk to me about?
No, dear. No. Should there be?
I was just wondering why you sent those 2 away.
Oh, that. Well, I just feel that if James spends some time with Mrs. Wendell, he'll appreciate you all the more. She was only with me a few minutes, and already I feel like breaking the 6th commandment.
Mrs. Bloxby, it's not like you to speak ill of someone. And I never thought of you as a matchmaker.
Well, there's quite a bit more to me than people think. I'm not just a mousy vicar's wife who bakes little cakes.
Are things still difficult at home?
Well, the police seem to be leaving my husband alone now. They seem to think that the killer was someone from Tristan's past.
My thoughts exactly. If only we had a time machine.
Well, we don't, dear, do we? Anyway, I feel what the whole village needs right now is a bit of light relief. So I'm going to organise a charity event.
What did you have in mind?
Well, it suddenly came to me while I was lying in the bath last night that we could raise money with this.
That's a rubber duck.
Exactly. Now, supposing we filled the village pond with these and each one had a lucky number, we could have a fishing game.
With respect, that's never going to be the highlight of the sporting calendar, is it?
Oh. Do you have a better idea?
Well, if you really want to get people spending, you need something they can gamble on.
Oh, a day at the races. Oh, duck races!
That's the most ridiculous. Actually, that might be possible. Farmer Ruskin has a mill stream on his land. You could float rubber ducks down it and have bets on the outcome.
Oh, goodness, sounds just like Las Vegas. Only in the countryside rather than the desert.
Yes, I'll go and have a word with Farmer Ruskin. Use my feminine wiles.
Yes, and I'll have a think about refreshments. We do have several bottles of Mrs. Beccarelli's homemade wine.
Well, if that's for sale, people will be very free and easy with their wallets.
Is that your phone, Mrs. Raisin?
I think I left mine at home.
So where on earth is it coming from?
I think it's coming from this tomb. Oh. You don't think someone's been buried alive, do you?
Well, the headstone says 1932, so I think the batteries would have run down by now.
I think I found it.
Oh, yes?
It's right here at the bottom of this urn.
Mrs. Raisin, don't touch it.
It could be something to do with the murder. Did Tristan have a mobile phone?
Yes, he did. Well, maybe he dropped it here on his way to the vicarage.
Perhaps there was a struggle.
Well, surely the police would have found it by now.
Well, finders keepers. Let's see who's been calling Tristan.
Mrs. Raisin, don't!
Why not?
Fingerprints! I'll go and get Bill Wong.
But I thought you wanted me to help with this.
Well, I also want you to stay alive. Whoever killed Tristan is very dangerous. I think you should leave it to the police.
Fine. Whatever you say. I'll get on with organising a day at the races.
Here, boys. Come and get your dinner. Well, Mrs. Raisin, it's a grand idea, but I don't reckon these ducks will go where you tell them to.
No, it's not that sort of duck.
Homing pigeons, yes. A rare breed of pig, if you ask it nicely, but ducks don't really have that team spirit.
No, I mean rubber ducks. Plastic ones, the kind you float in the bath.
Oh, that makes sense now. And at least you won't have the RSPCA breathing down your neck. Right bunch of killjoys they are.
So may we borrow your mill stream?
You surely may, my love, you surely may. I might even have a flutter myself. So, how are you going to get the crowds in? I'm stuck out here in the middle of nowhere.
We're going to give out flyers or have someone with a sandwich board.
Now, you need more than that. You need someone going round all the villages saying, roll up, roll up, roll up. A flash character, a brash character. Someone who's not afraid to make a fool of himself.
I can't believe you've dragged me away from home and hearth for one of your ridiculous charity charades.
Oh, shut up and put the costume on, Roy.
I was not put on this earth to waddle about the home counties dressed as Mother Goose.
This is Carsley Amateur Player's finest costume. Mrs. Bloxby sat into the small hours sewing on the feathers. Now, your left leg goes here, and your right leg here. Right.
Oh, it's the flea bag. Well, don't come any closer. I could crush you with my web feet.
Don't worry, Chivers. The silly duck man doesn't mean it. Now, I've got you a poem to read.
What?
To add a bit of comedy.
Oh, up to now it was a Greek tragedy.
Here you are. Now, remember, projection and diction.
Oh, yes. Barnyard animals mustn't mumble. I'm a lucky ducky. Though I've got little legs. I spend my day a-scratching hay and sometimes laying eggs. But now I'm going racing. Now there's a sight to see. So come along and place your bets. It's only 50p. Oh, this is awful. Who wrote this rubbish?
You're just not selling it properly. I knew we should have got Judi Dench.
One, two. And you join us for the fourth race of the afternoon. The conditions are good, not too much duckweed, and the birds themselves are under starter's audit. Triple winner Jemima Puzzleduck is the much-fancied favourite, but will Plucky Jim somehow manage to fix it? And they're off. And it's an early lead for Jemima Puzzleduck and Plucky Jim, but coming up on the inside lane is the great Donaldo. Donaldo inches into the lead. But what's this? He's upside down with his head beneath the water. Zip. Plucky Jim is in the lead, but the statistics are stacked against him. It's a two-duck race, but do not rule out a late challenge by Cock-a-doodle-doo. And in a hot stop, then Jemima and Plucky Jim are neck and neck, and yes, the winner is Plucky! Yes, a remarkable return to form for this very daring duck. Then it's Jemima, Cock-a-doodle-doo, and the ugly duckling. And as Plucky takes his place in the winner's enclosure, we adjourn for 5 minutes with the next race at 3 o'clock.
Roll up! Who will buy some Cotswold liqueur? A glass of Cotswold sunshine for only £1. Will you have a glass, Mrs. Wendell?
Not for me, Mrs. Raisin. I'm on the Carol Vorderman detox. I mean, not that I need to. I just thought I'd see what it was like.
Well, it's a powerful brew. Even the battling Boggles have decided to make love, not war.
She was a real magician, Mrs. Beccarelli.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, I spent many long evenings with her, sampling various concoctions. Her wine always had the power to loosen tongues.
Loosen tongues? Are you talking about Tristan?
Possibly. Yes. I think he may have told her more than he should have. And she was foolish enough to let on what she knew.
But what did he know that was so...
Oh, ladies, I can't thank you enough. You've raised a small fortune.
Oh, don't thank me, Mrs. Bloxby. It's all down to Mrs. Raisin.
Oh?
Well, if anyone has the power to drive people to drink, it's Mrs...
Speaking of drink, I'm a little worried about the Morris dancers. Al said they've been imbibing rather too freely, and he's going to have to introduce them on stage. I do hope it doesn't turn into an embarrassing shambles.
Morris dancing, an embarrassing shambles? Surely not.
Oh, look, it's your little feathered friend.
Oh, yes. Hello, Ducky.
Well, Aggie, that's the last time I humiliate myself for the likes of you.
Oh, dear, what happened?
Well, I've been to the Red Lion. I managed to persuade people to put down their pints and come and see the races.
Oh, well done, you.
But on my way here, I passed the children's playground. And the little darlings suddenly decided that swings and slides were passé, and that they'd much rather follow the funny duck man and pull out some of his tail feathers.
Oh, my word. Well, whatever did you do?
I told them to pluck off.
Oh, dear. Well, come on, let's get you out of the costume. Come on.
Well, we may as well count the money, Mrs. Raisin. 10.
What did you mean about loosening tongues? What do you think Tristan knew?
99, 100. Well, he'd met some very powerful people in the course of his fundraising, including a couple of millionaires, such as Richard Binzer.
I know that, but he gave Binzer his money back.
Oh, no, he didn't. Tristan refused. £2.50, £2.70. But Tristan had the upper hand, because he knew that Binzer was having an affair with someone. I don't know who, though. £2.90.
Mrs. Wendell, if you knew all this, why haven't you told the police?
I didn't think it wise. Mrs. Beccarelli told the world she knew something, and look what happened to her.
So why are you in such a hurry to get back?
Well, do you remember your old secretary, Lucy?
Oh, yes. Shorthand speed of 1 word a minute, and she couldn't use a fax machine. We had to use a carrier pigeon.
Well, she's getting married in the morning.
Is she? I hope she didn't send out the invites, or you'll be standing in an empty marquee.
You'll never guess who she's marrying.
No, but I'm thinking 3 times her age, with a large bank balance and a heart complaint.
Your old friend, Mr. Pedman.
Oh, that waste of space. I wish I'd never sold him the business.
And he'd only been running it 5 minutes when he sacked me. So I hope he does have a heart condition. That way we can have a combined wedding and funeral and I can dance on his grave.
Poor girl, marrying him. Her eyesight must be worse than I thought.
Well, personally, I think it's Stockholm Syndrome. You know, when a hostage falls in love with their captor. It's often like that with bosses and secretaries.
Secretaries? Roy, I've got to go.
What? My train doesn't get here for 20 minutes.
Thank you very much for all your help, and I'll be in touch next time I need something.
What? Is that all I am to you? The inside of a duck?
Oh, hello, Aggie.
The secretary did it.
Oh, Lord, she's off again. Which secretary did what?
Richard Binzer's secretary killed Tristan LaBelle.
And how did you work that one out? Was it written in the tail feathers of the winning duck?
Binzer is convinced he got his money back. It arrived on his desk in a plain brown envelope. But what if his secretary put it there? She paid the money, and then she came to Carsley to get it back from Tristan.
Now, talk about acting beyond the call of duty. I'm glad I'm not your secretary.
So am I. The thing is, she felt guilty because she was the one who introduced Tristan to him, which was like letting a viper into the nest.
Agatha, why would a secretary commit double murder? I mean, I know you can't get the staff these days.
She was having an affair with Richard Binzer, and Tristan found out, and I rather think he was threatening to tell Mrs. Binzer.
Now, hold your horses. The secretary couldn't have killed Mrs. Beccarelli, could she? Because we saw her in London the day Mrs. Beccarelli died.
Mrs. Beccarelli had been dead 24 hours when we found her. She died the day we made the appointment, and we made that with a temporary secretary. The real one wouldn't have let me within a mile of her beloved boss.
Well, all this is terribly interesting, and you're certainly giving Agatha Christie a run for her money, but do you actually have any evidence?
No, of course not, but nothing else fits.
Oh, I see. So you've ruled out alien abduction, international terrorism, and evil twins, have you? Look, why don't you go home, take your shoes and socks off, and have a nice cup of chamomile tea?
Because it tastes like pond water. Now, are you going to help me or not?
I think I shall opt for the latter, but if you really feel strongly, you can always go and talk to Bill Wong.
Oh, don't be silly. He's far too busy restraining Morris dancers. Look, why don't we pop down to London tomorrow and follow the secretary home from work?
And so what exactly? You are a multiple murderer, and I claim my £5 prize.
No, of course not. We'll have to be devious.
Oh, really? Do you think you can manage that?
Are you coming or not?
As it happens, it's out of the question. I'm having dinner with my editor.
James, this is a matter of life and death. And you're going to chew the fat with some tweedy academic with elbow patches?
Actually, we'll be chewing some rather fine moule marinier, and I don't think Olga wears elbow patches.
Olga?
Olga Brzezinski, my editor.
Sounds like a Russian shot-putter. Well, I hope it all goes well. You and Olga can have a nice dish of borscht, and Cagney can solve this without James Lacey.
Well, I've typed up the minutes of the Mandelson meeting. I've got some trunks for your trip to the Maldives and a silver rattle for your nephew's christening.
Oh, Melody. Where would I be without you?
Selling the big issue at Liverpool Street Station.
You sure you won't join me for dinner?
not tonight. Anyway, what would your wife say?
Well, I can always say the train was late. Now that I'm running them, they usually are.
How much longer do we have to keep on hiding?
Not much longer. Soon. I'll get it all sorted soon, I promise. So, where are you going this evening?
Dinner with my ex-boss.
Oh. So there was someone else before me.
Well, you've had other secretaries.
I won't be making that mistake again. So, what's your old boss up to now, then?
Well, he fared rather badly in the last recession. He now runs a bed and breakfast in the Cotswolds.
Really? Just think, if you'd stuck with him, now you'd be changing sheets in some B&B.
Oh, no. If I'd stuck with him, he'd be a millionaire businessman.
Hello, I'm sorry I'm not available, but please do leave a message.
James, where are you? Oh, of course, you're out with the shop putter. Well, I followed our suspect home from work. She went for a meal with a rather seedy middle-aged man, and he's just said goodnight on her doorstep. The address is 37 Chepstow Villas, Ladbroke Grove. He's now driving away in a battered Fiat Panda. Registration number... Oh, dear.
Is there a reason you've been following me all evening?
Oh, hello. Do I know you? Sorry. I was thinking of buying a house in the area, and you know what they say about visiting a place at 11 o'clock when the pubs have shut.
Mrs. Raisin, please stop digging.
OK, I'll put down the shovel.
So, do you have an explanation?
I'm sorry for following you, but I had to get you on your own. Now, you may not want to hear this, but I have conclusive proof that your boss murdered Tristan LaBelle.
My boss?
I think so, but I may need your help. Can we talk?
Well, perhaps we should go inside. It's not safe on the streets these days.
I'm terribly sorry. I know this must seem very cloak and dagger.
No, not at all. So, how do you like your coffee?
Black, no sugar. You see, I wasn't sure if that man you were with was something to do with Richard Bincer.
Oh, no, that was a friend. He runs a small hotel in the Lake District. Now, can I get you something to eat, as you spent all evening with your nose pressed to the restaurant window?
Was I that obvious?
Not at all, but it pays to be perceptive in my job.
I'm fine, thanks. Which one of these is mine?
Either. We both take it the same way. So, you have proof that my boss is a murderer?
I think so. But I need your help to confirm it.
What are you talking about?
I found Tristan's mobile. It was in the graveyard where he had a struggle with his killer.
And how do you know it was his?
I recognised the ringtone. It was Ride of the Valkyrie. Now, if we could just look at the numbers in the call log...
Have you told the police?
I don't trust them. They're always happy to chase the little man, but if you're a multimillionaire, they protect you.
Who were you talking to earlier?
Oh, just my cleaning lady, telling her I'd be staying in London tonight.
So, let's have a look at this phone.
I haven't got it with me. I thought I might get mugged.
Where is it?
In a locker at Paddington Station.
Fine. I'll get a taxi and go and have a look.
Right. I'd best give you the ticket. No. Maybe this is a mistake. We should go to the police.
We'll go to the police afterwards. Just give me the ticket.
You're starting to scare me.
I only want to do the right thing. And as you say, the police can't always be trusted.
No, you can't trust anybody. Which is why sometimes you just have to take desperate measures.
So there isn't a locker at Paddington Station?
No, that's my lottery ticket. Hope you feel lucky.
Oh, Mrs. Raisin, I didn't mean to kill anyone. I just wanted my money back. Only Tristan decided he was going to tell the whole world about me and Richard. I had no choice.
And Mrs. Beccarelli?
Oh, she knew too much. I'm not proud of what I did, but if you'd ever loved anyone like I love Richard...
Look, what's done is done, but this isn't going to end with the two of you walking into the sunset.
Oh, it might, Mrs. Raisin. The night is young.
Just put that knife down.
Shut up, you stupid bitch.
Help! Help somebody!
One more
me!
noise and you'll be joining Tristan.
Oh, for pity's sake, the police are at the door.
There's no one at the door. You're hearing things. You must be mad.
Agatha!
Up here! James!
Agatha! Melody Paul?
Oh.
I'm arresting you on 2 charges of murder.
No,
One of perverting the course of...
No!
One of perverting the course of...
Are you all right?
As well as you can be when you've had a knife pressed to your jugular.
Why didn't you leave it to the police? They were on to her.
If the police had called, she would have clammed up. It took another ruthless woman to get under her wire.
One of these days, Agatha.
One of these days you'll learn to listen to me. Anyway, I thought you were meeting your editor.
That's right, in Notting Hill. I picked up your message while Olga was powdering her nose.
And you condescended to come and rescue me.
Of course I did. I'd walk 1,000,000 miles for one of your smiles.
And then what happened? Did he take you in his arms and promise to love you forevermore?
No, Roy, he had to get back to his editor. So he shoved me in a taxi and sent me off to Paddington Station.
With a little label attached, please look after this Aggie.
So I thought I'd crash with you for a few days.
That's fine. I do have a rather knackered old sofa bed.
Well, I hope you'll be comfortable on it. I'm having your room. I need to stretch out. Roy.
Aggie?
Am I wasting my time with James?
Hard to say. He seems like a nice chap, but he might be a bit out of your league.
You cheeky sod.
Perhaps if we got you spruced up a little. Tell you what, tomorrow morning we'll go to Camden Market, get some silk stockings, a nice sexy negligee.
Can we get something for me as well?
Honestly, men. Who needs them?
We do, Roy, we do.
In Agatha Raisin, Penelope Keith starred as Agatha, and Malcolm Sinclair was James. Richard Binzer was played by Nicky Henson, Mrs. Bloxby by Liza Sadovy, and D.C. Wong by Stephen Hogan, with James Holmes as Roy, Tina Gray as Mrs. Wendell, Ella Smith as Miss Partle, and Gerard McDermott as Farmer Ruskin. Agatha Raisin was dramatised by David Semple from the novel by M.C. Beaton, and the producer was Carol Smith. Agatha Raisin by M.C. Beaton, dramatised for radio by David Semple, starring Penelope Keith as Agatha. Episode 3, Buried Treasure.
So, Mrs. Raisin, how long have you been smoking?
Is this relevant? I thought you were going to hypnotise me, not write my biography.
It just helps me build up a picture. It's so hard to date smoke as it has such an ageing effect on the skin.
Well, you could always cut me open and count the rings.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to be offensive.
No, I'm sure it comes naturally.
Mrs. Raisin, are you sure you want to give up?
Yes, of course. Now, can we get this over with?
Right. Now, breathe in. And out.
Mrs. Raisin?
Oh, sorry, Mrs. Bloxby. I was miles away.
I could tell. When James Lacey was giving us his book readings, someone was in the arms of Morpheus.
Oh, dear. Was I that obvious?
At first we thought the noise was a storm brewing, but then we saw you flat on your back on the ping-pong table.
It's this wretched hypnotherapy. I keep falling asleep.
Oh, yes. How is that going?
Oh, absolute disaster, I'm afraid.
Why's that?
Well, it actually works. I haven't had a you-know-what for over a week.
Well, I thought the whole idea of the hypno-what's-it was to give up the you-know-what.
Oh, no. I went to hypnotherapy so that I could tell people I'd tried and then they'd stop nagging me.
Well, perhaps you could be hypnotised to make you start again.
I hope so. I need some pleasure in life. At the moment, every time I put a you-know-what in my mouth, it tastes of burning rubber.
Oh, goodness. I hope my cheese straws don't have that effect on you. You couldn't pass them round, could you?
Are there many people left?
Oh, yes, they're still queuing up to get their books signed. Our Mr. Lacey is quite the local celebrity.
Yes. Who would have thought the Carsley ladies would be quite so interested in the Peninsular War?
Just one more, Mr. Lacey. It's for my son, Jeremy.
I didn't know you had children, Mrs. Hicks.
Oh, yes. My son's at Oxford University, you know.
Is he really? Which college?
I just told you. Oxford University.
Right. To Jeremy, best of luck with your education.
Oh, he will appreciate this. He's such a gifted boy.
Yes, I'm sure he is.
James,
I couldn't trouble you for just one more, could I?
Certainly, Mrs. Friendly. Is it for you?
Oh, yes. A little something to curl up with under the duvet on these long winter nights.
Right. To Mrs. Friendly, best wishes, James Lacey.
You must have signed 100 this evening. I'm amazed your wrist can stand up to it.
Yes, well, that's the army training, you know. You spent several months arm wrestling at Sandhurst, so your wrist is ready for years and years of paperwork.
Really?
No, that was a joke. Sorry.
You and your jokes, James. You are a one.
Cheese straw, anybody?
Not while I'm talking to Mr. Lacey. Oh, you're awake now, are you?
I was not asleep. I was listening with my eyes closed. Well, if no one else is having one.
Have you thought of a sequel? I mean, there are so many other wars to write about. I'm a huge fan of the 100 Years' War.
Good Lord, are you all right?
Sorry. It's the hypnotherapy. Sometimes when I put something in my mouth, it tastes of burning rubber.
So, not content with drowning out the reading with your snoring, you now decide to liberally coat my copy with cheese straws.
It was an accident.
Funny how I'm always on the receiving end of your accidents. Oh, look, it's all over my old O'Neill pashmina.
Goodness, and just when they were about to come back into fashion.
Right, if we could all just give a big round of applause for James Lacey. Yes, thank you. And I'll just get a dustpan and brush.
Well, Agatha, I'm proud of you.
Why's that? Because I spat out food at your book signing?
Because you've given up the evil weed. If you now project pastry crumbs over people, that's a small price to pay.
Makes me even more tetchy than usual. I mean, when Mrs. Friendly started going on about her pashmina, I just wanted to throttle her with it. I mean, the woman is a complete...
Would you like a lift?
Mrs. Friendly, we were just talking about you.
James, do hop in. You are only 2 doors down from me.
Yes, and I actually live next door to you.
Oh, so you do. Well, you can go in the back, but try not to spit on the upholstery. You'd best go in the front, James. You've got such long legs.
Right.
Yes. Well, James, I must say, your talk certainly spiced up the Ladies' Society. I mean, it can be so dreary.
Well, it's quite a nice way to meet the village. I mean, I never knew that Mrs. Higgs had a son at Oxford.
Yes, they really have lowered their entry requirements. Jeremy always struck me as a bit of a yob. Bright blue hair and a permanent scowl. He looked like a satanic budgie.
Well, we being just a teensy bit censorious. I mean, during the Regency period, a powder blue wig was the height of fashion.
I think he's a very nice young man. I hope he comes to visit soon.
Actually, James, you must have met him. He came home last summer, remember? About the time we had all the burglaries and your computer was stolen.
You're implying that 2 things were connected?
Now, there's a thought. I must tell Bill Wong. It never occurred to me that it could have
Can
been
we leave the poor boy alone, please, as he isn't here to defend himself?
Yeah. And we don't want to see budgies put behind bars.
James. Now, how are things going with your battle reenactment?
Oh, it's all systems go. I just need 1 or 2 more Cavalier costumes.
Well, if my sewing circle can do anything to assist...
What battle reenactment?
Well, you must have heard, surely. We've been discussing it at the Ladies' Society for months.
I didn't hear anything.
Perhaps you were asleep.
Yeah, March the 31st, we're restaging the Civil War on the village green.
Well, I wish you'd told me. I can turn my hand to a bit of sewing.
I suppose now you don't have a cigarette in it.
No, have you noticed the way her hand shakes? Oh, I don't think that'll be threading many needles.
Well, thank you very much for the lift.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, likewise.
No, Mrs. Raisin, I'll drop you off at your door.
It's only 12 yards away.
I'll drop you off at your door.
Right.
Mrs. Raisin, a friendly word.
Fire away, Mrs. Friendly.
A number of people at the Carsley Ladies' Society have been discussing how embarrassing it is the way you fling yourself at James Lacey.
The way I offer him lifts and buy 6 copies of his book to sign?
Well, that's different. He can get on with someone like me.
What's that supposed to mean?
Someone with a sense of history. I mean, what do you know about the Civil War? You probably don't even know when it ended.
Indeed, Mrs. Friendly, because it's only just begun. Chivers, please put down the daddy long legs. It's all right for you. Your little pleasures don't make you fat or spotty or wrinkly. Right, I'll have one more go at lighting a cigarette. I do like cigarettes. They are delicious. I do like cigarettes. They are delicious. Oh, for heaven's sake. Hello. Yes, who is it?
That's a nice way to talk to your oldest and dearest friend.
Oh, Roy, it's not fair. I've lost the ability to smoke.
Well, so long as you can chew your food and dress yourself.
No, I've been to a hypnotherapist and he's made them taste disgusting. I've just thrown the last packet into the garden.
Oh, well, his curse will wear off eventually, and by then they'll have grown into a tobacco plantation.
Are you calling for anything in particular or just to mock?
Well, partly to mock and partly to gloat. You know you said I could never get a job in television.
Oh, yes.
I've just got a job in television.
Doing what? Muffin the Mule stunt double?
Actually, I'm a senior program consultant.
Oh, I see. You're a researcher, but they've given you a fancy job title.
I'll have you know, our company has made some extremely prestigious documentaries for the History Channel.
Which company?
Well, it's me, my friend Gary, and the bloke with a fairy microphone.
How prestigious can one get? What are you working on at the moment?
Oh, it's called Treasure Island. We go all around the country digging up the legendary lost treasures of history.
And I suppose you've buried them the night before.
How dare you insult our integrity? Only if we're desperate.
I thought so. Roy, you wouldn't know anything about the Civil War, would you?
I think Gary did something on that last year. It's always popular with the overseas market.
Really? That might just come in useful.
Oh, my word, Mrs. Friendly. It's all going great guns in here.
We're pulling out all the stops, James. If our famous author wants 50 dragoons' uniforms, then he shall surely have them.
How am I doing, Mr. Lacey?
Oh, sterling effort, Mrs. Hicks. The Cavaliers did have brass buttons.
Oh, are you sure?
Oh, definitely. I don't think we can go with toggles. I'll get there. Don't want anyone to drop their stitches.
Mrs. Hicks, do remind me to get James's inside leg measurement.
Didn't you take that yesterday, Mrs. Friendly?
I did, but I must have mislaid it.
Ladies, I think you can put down your needles and threads. I have something that might make your lives a little easier.
Oh, Mrs. Raisin, the suspense is killing me.
Costumes from a recent film about the Civil War.
Good Lord, that could be useful.
Oh.
Or possibly not.
What's the matter?
Well, I was hoping for regimental coats, knee breeches, feathered hats, and, these are all frock coats and cravats.
They've all been authenticated. They're from a documentary about the Civil War.
Yes, it's the American Civil War. Still, they'll come in useful if Carsley Amateur Dramatics ever put on God with the Wind.
Well, how was I supposed to know which Civil War? You never said.
Well, thank heavens you didn't go for the Spanish Civil War, or we'd all be in sombreros. Hasta la vista, Mrs. Raisin. Oh, Mrs. Raisin, it is nice to see you.
I'm glad someone thinks so.
Oh, could you close the door, please? I've got flour on my fingers.
Baking again, Mrs. Bloxby?
Oh, I'm making a batch of scones for the Civil War reenactment. I thought that between battles we could all make peace and have a green tea.
Goodness. If only you'd been around, the real Civil War would have been so much more civil.
So, what can I do for you? Do have a seat.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you a question about history.
History, Mrs. Raisin?
Yes. Do you know any stories about treasure being buried round here?
Buried treasure? Well, there is one local legend.
Oh, yes.
Well, as you know, there were a lot of battles around here between Roundheads and Cavaliers, and there was one story about a royalist soldier, Sir Geoffrey Lamont, I think his name was, who was on the run from Cromwell. And they think that he hid out in this village. He was supposed to have had a fortune in gold and jewels, all his worldly goods, but when they found him, he did not have a penny.
I see. So, either he buried his fortune somewhere in the village, or he bought a sandwich at Mrs. Harvey's shop.
Well, there's something like that. Why
Why are you so interested? Just thought I'd take up a new hobby, that's all. Has anyone ever looked for it?
Well, the Historical Society did go looking a few years ago, but all they found was a supermarket trolley. Mind you, they did get £1 for it.
Always the way. Well, it's a good story, though I suspect it was invented by the Cotswold Tourist Board.
Actually, Mrs. Raisin, I'm very glad you're here, because there was something I wanted to ask you.
Oh, yes?
Do you know anything at all about, gay people?
Mrs. Bloxby. What do you want to know?
Well, I've got a friend, and for a long time I've been wondering if her son might be gay. It's just a suspicion. But there's been a strange kind of rift between mother and son, a tension, a friction, something in the air.
Are you talking about Mrs. Hicks?
Oh, goodness gracious, how did you know?
Well, there must be a rift between those two the size of the Cheddar Gorge. She's always talking about how clever Jeremy is, how gifted, but have you noticed? He never comes home to visit.
Yes, well, they used to be extremely close before Mr. Hicks died and Jeremy dyed his hair. But I think she may have driven him away. She can be very small-minded at times.
Her brain is in sharp contrast to the size of her mouth. But what do you want to ask me?
Well, I thought that you might know some gay people, working in the media, and I wondered if perhaps there was a book or a leaflet that we could give Mrs. Hicks that would make her realise that her son is just the same wonderful person that he was before he...
Yes. You know my friend Roy, who used to work in PR with me?
Oh, yes, such a nice young man.
It has been rumoured that he's gay.
Really? Well, it just goes to show you can't tell by looking.
Yes. Perhaps I could have a word with him.
Hello?
Roy, it's me. I wanted to talk to you about homosexuality.
Oh, so living in the country has had its effect on you. I suppose it's all those long walks in sensible shoes.
No, it's just I've got this friend in the village.
Oh, yes, a friend.
Yes, and we think her son might be, licking the other side of the stamp. And I just wondered, do you have any books or leaflets, to say that gay people don't always eat babies?
Well, as long as you pay the postage.
Oh, you don't need to send them. You're coming up to Carsley at the weekend with your film crew.
I'm not dragging myself up the M40 again. Why should I?
To look for buried treasure.
Britain, land of heritage and history. But what mysterious secrets lay buried in its nooks and crannies? Over the next 26 weeks, we intend to dig and delve until this green and pleasant land looks like the surface of the moon. And so we come to the picturesque village of... what's it called again?
Honestly, Roy, you're hopeless. And I don't know why you're playing to the camera. They haven't even turned it on yet.
I am just trying to establish the certain je ne sais quoi of this particular mise-en-scène.
Do they actually use your voiceover on the finished programme?
No, they don't, actually. Apparently, I do not have enough gravitas, so they take it down to Soho and Jonathan Ross does it.
Tell you what, I'll have a go.
Oh, no, you won't. You're not stealing my TV career before it's even begun.
Oh, belt up. I'm doing you a favour. This is how it's done. Carsley, in the rolling green hills of the Cotswolds. A peaceful place. But put your ear to the ground and you can hear the echo of former wars being fought. For it was here in 1642 that Oliver Cromwell led his soldiers...
Mrs. Raisin!
Oh, Mrs. Hicks. Oh, have you met my friend Roy?
Is he the one who sent me that disgusting book?
Not me, no, never.
Well, someone did. And I assume it's to do with those rumours that have been spreading about my son.
Oh, Jeremy? How is he these days?
Oh, Jeremy's as right as rain. Though he's extremely busy with the rugby team. I mean, playing rugby.
Well, that's marvellous.
He certainly has no interest in the kind of smut that you see fit to peddle.
I can assure you my friend would never handle anything that could remotely be described as smutty. Roy, what did you put through her letterbox?
Nothing.
I'll tell you what he put. It was a 200-page hardback, lavishly illustrated throughout, entitled The Joy of Gay Sex.
Oh, Roy.
I was only trying to help.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very distinguished book.
Really? I'm amazed they haven't serialised it on Woman's Hour.
Give them time.
I phoned Jeremy to tell him, and he was extremely upset.
Well, I'm sorry, but no offence was intended.
No, not about the book, but because I phoned him when he was in the middle of entertaining a charming young French girl called Fifi.
Well, we just want to say that absolutely nothing was meant by the book.
And can we have it back if you're finished with it?
Chivers, even woodlice deserve some sort of existence.
Right, well, I shall be off then.
Oh, Roy, please give it another go. I'm sure there's treasure somewhere in this village.
Aggie, I've been all around the weekend dangling my metal detector, but it wouldn't even go ping.
But it's a famous legend, the treasure of Geoffrey Lamont. Thousands of historians have written about it.
Well, some stories do get told time and time again. The cheque is in the post. Of course, you don't look fat. I'll promise I'll phone you.
What wise words come from the mouths of fools.
So, I shall get back to my glamorous London life and leave you to your sad provincial existence.
And now I haven't even got nicotine to help me get through it.
Well, you've still got the handsome historian next door. Had any more snogs?
I am through with James Lacey. He doesn't want someone like me. He wants some timid little country mouse. Oh, I've just got to try and have a cigarette.
Fine by me.
They're out in the garden somewhere. I threw them out along with the lighter.
Well, perhaps my metal detector will come in useful then. Oh, I've forgotten how you make it work.
Possibly the button marked on.
What it is to be technically minded.
I wonder where Chivers went.
Hopefully she's fallen down a mine shaft.
Oh, don't be so horrible. She always seems to get lost in my jungle.
Certainly is a jungle. What happened to that fabulous designer garden I did for you?
Like so much else in my life, it's gone to seed.
Honestly, Aggie, you should just count your blessings.
What are they then?
Well, there's... No, sorry, can't think of any at the moment. Hang on a minute, this is weird.
What have you got? Is it my lighter?
Oh, no, it's much bigger than that. Stretches halfway across your garden. Now, don't get your hopes up, but it could be a supermarket trolley. I'm not happy. Do you really think this is the right... Are you sure?
Agatha, don't you think it's a little premature calling in a film crew? We don't even know what it is down there.
James, there's no point waiting till we've dug it up. Television needs drama, discovery and adventure.
Yes, the drama of finding an abandoned wheelbarrow. That's well worth a licence fee.
Do I detect a note of jealousy?
What on earth do you mean by that?
Well, you're the distinguished historian, but it won't be you getting your picture in the papers.
Agatha, when your newspapers are wrapped around a battered haddock, my book will still be in the shops.
Oh, so you don't think anyone's going to buy it?
Look, I just don't see why you have to turn everything into a media circus. It trivialises it.
Typical Tweedy intellectual. Just because you use mass media doesn't mean you have to be trivial.
Right, now, all the blokes who are digging, could you take your tops off, please? We need to sex this up a little.
I rest my case.
Oh, Roy.
Now, just get a few vox pops. Gary, follow me and keep your cameras on the local yokels.
Okay, ready to take this one in 3, 2...
I'm standing with the famous author James Lacey, who wrote, some book or other. James, how long have you been living in the Cotswolds?
Getting on for 2 years now.
And where did you live before that?
Is this relevant?
I'm just making conversation. And do you think we're likely to find the legendary lost treasure of Norman Lamont?
Geoffrey Lamont.
Whatever.
Well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. That's the reason we're standing here.
Now, I've just heard in my earpiece we have now reached the actual lid of the actual treasure chest. It appears to be made of iron, or possibly silver or gold, or even aluminium. It's very hard to tell.
Thank heavens for Jonathan Ross.
Now with me are the distinguished PR consultant, Agatha Raisin, and the distinguished greengrocer, Mrs. Friend.
Hello.
So, how did you feel about the treasure hunt?
Well, of course, I pulled out all the stops to make sure it happened. I got in touch with the Historical Society to see if they'd looked here before. I phoned the press and the council.
Oh, friendly by name, friendly by nature.
It's amazing how friendly you can be when there's a TV camera pointing at you.
Well, I've just heard they have now unearthed the actual chest. And this is an historical moment, because it's a moment when we actually look at something from history, and you can't get much more historical than that.
No, it isn't.
What?
That trunk is definitely not 17th century.
How can you tell?
Well, there are a number of factors, one of which is the luggage label on it saying, "Welcome to Ibiza."
Who would bury an old trunk in my garden?
Well, this is the moment of truth. Could it be Geoffrey Lamont's treasure? Or somebody's pawn collection? They're about to open the box. Well, this is looking a little disappointing. The box is filled with 21st century technology. A video, a mobile phone, a DVD player.
That's my laptop.
What?
My computer that was stolen.
Well, there seems to be something underneath this treasure trove, and we're moving closer to see what it is.
Oh, what is it, Mrs. Hicks? It's Jeremy.
Would you like a glass of water, Mrs. Raisin?
No, thank you. Not on top of the 6 cups of coffee I've just had.
Right then. Interview commenced on the 18th of February at 4 p.m. Are you Mrs. Agatha Raisin of 18 Lilac Lane?
You should know by now, Bill.
For the tape, Mrs. Raisin, for the tape.
Yes. That's right, I am.
And this afternoon, I believe you witnessed the discovery of a body in your back garden.
Well, it wasn't just me. It was half the village, a film crew and 6 half-naked archaeologists.
And you were able to identify this body?
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Raisin is nodding her head.
I know that.
For the tape. So who was it?
It was Jeremy Hicks, who used to live across the road from me.
And do you have any idea how he came to be buried in your garden?
I've no idea how anything gets in my garden. Dead birds, crisp packets, vodka bottles. I'm surprised there was just the one dead body.
And was this body in a container of any kind?
Well, yes, you've got all this on film. It was a sort of enormous metal trunk.
Had you ever seen this container before?
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Raisin is shaking her head.
Do you have to describe every little thing I do?
For the tape, Mrs. Raisin. And do you have any idea how this container came to be in your garden?
No, and instead of asking me fatuous questions, you should talk to Mrs. Hicks and ask why she claims she spoke to her son yesterday when he's clearly been dead for several months. D.C. Wong is raising his eyes to the heavens.
What?
For the tape, D.C. Wong, for the tape.
Agatha. Well, you've succeeded in getting your picture in the papers.
Yes, James, and that battered haddock can't come soon enough.
Do they have any idea how the body got into your garden?
No, but as I've had 6 holidays in the past 2 years, there's been ample opportunity.
Come to think of it, it's the perfect place to hide a body. I mean, the chances of you doing any gardening and finding it were fairly remote.
Do you have to turn everything into an insult?
I'm sorry. Force of habit. Oh, let's go outside. I've been talking to your friend Roy. Apparently he wanted to make a fly-on-the-wall documentary following the police around as they solved the murder. He sent him away with a flea in his ear.
Typical Roy. Anyway, it won't be the police who'll solve this murder. It'll be us.
Oh, no, please, no. Please, 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 no.
At least I'm no longer a suspect. I mean, why would I bury a body, then invite a film crew to watch me dig it up?
I don't know. Sounds like ideal viewing for Channel 4.
Anyway, this would never have happened if I hadn't given up smoking. I knew no good would come of it.
I've never known anyone with such a talent for justifying their appalling vices.
Thank you very much. Well, let's see if the shock of seeing a corpse in my chrysanthemums has lifted the curse.
You're not starting again, are you?
I certainly am. Seeing that body made me realise you never know when death's coming. young, so why deprive yourself? Embrace life.
Yes, the NHS should really adopt that as a slogan. Embrace life. Smoke a cigarette. And the verdict?
Heavenly. Well, that's got me cured. And now there's just that small matter of a murder.
In Agatha Raisin, Penelope Keith starred as Agatha, and Malcolm Sinclair was James. Linda Barron played Mrs. Hicks, and Joanna Brooks, Mrs. Friendly. Liza Sadovy was Mrs. Bloxby, and Stephen Hogan, D.C. Wong, with James Holmes as Roy. Agatha Raisin was dramatised by David Semple from the novel by M.C. Beaton, and the producer was Carol Smith. Agatha Raisin by M.C. Beaton, dramatised for radio by David Semple, starring Penelope Keith as Agatha. Episode 4, The Civil War.
This is the 10:07 train calling at Kingham, Jarbury, Hamburg and Oxford. We apologise for the late departure of this service. This was due to the late arrival of the preceding one.
Is it me, or is British Rail losing the will to live? Even the excuses are disappointing.
Perhaps that's why they got rid of it 20 years ago and replaced it with individual operating companies.
Thank you, James. Why do I always have to sit next to the anorak? Right, let's go through the facts. 1 year ago, a crime wave came to Garsley, and something like a dozen houses were burgled.
Fast forward 1 year, and we've now found the culprit. He's been buried in a box at the bottom of your garden.
At least we think he's the culprit, and he's been buried with everything that was stolen in my garden.
A very good place to hide a body. Under those undisturbed weeds, you could have all the war dead of the Crimea.
And there's plenty of room for one more. Now, the body is Jeremy Hicks, 19-year-old son of Mrs. Hicks, widow of this parish. And the police confirm he was buried a year ago.
Which is odd, because the mother has been telling all and sundry that her son was at Oxford enjoying carnal relations with a French student called Fifi.
So why would she lie? Did she know her son was rotting at the bottom of my garden?
What a poetic turn of phrase, Agatha. You really should become a bereavement counsellor. Perhaps Mrs. Hicks had a falling out with her son and didn't want anyone to know.
Yes, because we also suspect the son was a homosexual.
Homosexual.
What?
It's from the Greek root homos, meaning same, as in same-sex attraction, as opposed to the Latin homo, meaning man.
Well, we'll never solve this murder if I don't even know basic Latin.
I just think if it's worth saying, you may as well say it correctly.
We're not going anywhere.
Well, that's no reason for sloppy pronunciation.
I mean, the train. We keep grinding to a halt.
Yes. Perhaps that's why Sherlock Holmes did so well. He didn't have to contend with a privatised rail network.
And he didn't have a sidekick who was a complete pedant. This calls for a cigarette.
Agatha, this is supposed to be a non-smoking compartment.
And this is supposed to be a moving train. I'll keep my side of the bargain when they keep theirs.
Oh, Mrs. Friendly.
Mrs. Hicks, I just had to come and pay my condolences.
Yes, of course you did. Come in.
Do the police have any idea what happened yet?
Oh, no. Or if they do, they're not saying. Sit down.
Oh, thank you.
There is a part of me that hopes they never find out.
Really?
Well, the thing is, we hadn't been in contact for nearly a year. But I left his room exactly the way it was. His stereo, his clothes in a heap. Because one day I knew he'd come back to it. And part of me still feels that. I can't even tidy up now, because it'd be like murdering him again.
Oh, there, Mrs. Hicks.
I mean, it's unnatural, isn't it, for your child to go first?
I can't think of anything worse in the world, but, there is something I wanted to warn you about.
Oh, yes?
A lot of people in the village are asking questions about why Jeremy left home and what happened to him. I heard Mrs. Raisin and Mr. Lacey talk about it over the garden fence. They've gone up to Oxford to talk to one of his university tutors.
They mustn't. I don't want them finding out about Jeremy and his private life.
Enter. Professor Wolfe, I'm James Lacey, and this is Agatha Raisin. We spoke on the phone.
Oh, so we did. Please be seated.
We're not interrupting anything, are we?
Well, I was just digesting my roll mops whilst contemplating all the possible anagrams of Gerard Manley Hopkins. Nearly hard poems, king, heap, my lord's anger, ink. They throw such light on his work, don't you think?
Yes, fascinating. Well, we wanted to talk about a student of yours, Jeremy Hicks.
Oh, Jerry! What's he been up to now? Do you know, his attendance has been so bad this term, we're thinking of having him sent down.
Well, he has a very good excuse. He's dead.
What?
I'm afraid it's true. He was murdered, and we want to find out what happened to him in his final months.
Jeremy? God's finger touched him, and he slept.
Professor Wolfe, we have a few questions to ask you.
Well, I don't see why I should talk to you. You're not the police.
No, but I'm sure there's a lot you want to get off your chest, particularly as the two of you were lovers.
Who said that?
Jeremy did.
I think it's overstating it to say we were lovers, although he did come to my room and read me his poetry.
Did his mother know about your relationship?
I can see this is going to take some time. I'll go and get some tea.
Agatha, how did you come to that conclusion?
It wasn't hard. When I mentioned Jeremy's name, a mist seemed to form on his half-moon glasses.
Can you read my thoughts the way you read his?
Yes, but they're not all that interesting. What I want to know is why the professor didn't seem bothered that Jeremy had been missing for a year.
Oh, these Oxford dons don't have any concept of time. Sitting in a 500-year-old college reading 1,000-year-old poetry.
Speaking of ancient, I wonder how Jeremy's mother felt, knowing that he was sleeping with someone old enough to be his father.
Well, we don't actually know they were sleeping together.
Oh, no. They sat up all night writing rhyming couplets.
Look, even if they did engage in a physical act, is it any concern of ours?
If we're investigating his murder, then yes. Why are you so embarrassed? You really are like that professor. You live in your own little dreamland, and anything to do with emotions or sex terrifies you.
There we are. 3 cups of Earl Grey's finest.
Thank you.
So, was there more to your relationship than discussing iambic pentameters?
It wasn't a relationship as such. He used me as a confidant and told me what was in his heart.
And what was that?
About that one-man war he was waging with his hideous hook-nosed mother.
Hook-nosed?
Oh, yes. A most prominent proboscis. She made Virginia Woolf seem quite petite. Mrs. Hicks disapproved of our friendship.
I'm rather surprised you told her.
Well, you know the way it is with young people. One day she was saying to him, "You're a disgusting specimen. You never tidy your bedroom. You don't do a thing to help around the house." And he replied, "Oh, and that's not all. I'm having an affair with my personal tutor." And then last June, Jeremy told me of his decision to leave home.
Professor?
Yes?
There's a police gentleman here to see you.
What? Oh, well, I'm almost finished with these people.
I'll tell him you won't be long.
Hold on a moment. This policeman, what does he look like?
Well, quite short for a policeman.
Oh, yes, 5'2", half Chinese.
That's right. Shall I show him in?
Definitely not. Just keep him waiting outside.
Right.
Professor, our local police officer has followed us here, and he's not going to be happy that we've interfered. Is there any other way out of your office?
Well, you could go via the window and find out if Isaac Newton was right.
Is there a cupboard?
If you can squeeze in next to the E.M. Forster first edition.
Agatha, that isn't rum.
Nonsense. Since I started smoking again, I've lost 6 pounds.
Oh, dear. I'm not quite so agile as I used to be.
Take a deep breath, James. We're going in. Yes. I'll get over there.
Enter.
Right, I thought Professor?
Yes?
I'm surprised to find you alone. I'm sure I heard voices from outside.
Yes, well, I was communing with the spirits of Virgil and Shakespeare.
Virgil and Shakespeare, eh? And which one of them has a squeaky voice? Well. So you didn't quite make it through to Narnia, then?
Hello, Bill.
Detective Constable Wong. There's a perfectly innocent explanation.
No, there isn't, Colonel Lacey, but I'm sure back at the village we'll all think of one. Now, if you two would wait outside, I'll give you a ride in a police car later. But first of all, I want to find out what else Professor Wolf has got in his closet.
Well, thanks for the lift.
You're welcome. It's always nice to have you two where I can see you.
Do they have any idea how he was killed yet?
Nice of you to ask, Mrs. Raisin. Sometimes I forget why I do my job. It's not to solve crime, it's to provide you with bits of gossip.
Come on, Bill. We've helped you in the past.
And almost got yourself killed in the process. Well, if you must know, you was stabbed with a kitchen knife. Now, can you two do me a favour?
Of course. What is it?
When you go to the funeral, make sure you ask lots of awkward questions. See if you can antagonise the whole village, snoop into everybody's private life.
Bill, I can't believe you just said that.
Neither can I. But as you never seem to listen, I'm hoping that, as usual, you'll do the exact opposite to what I tell you.
Not much of a turnout, really, all things considered.
Well, nobody knows who they're really burying. Is it the nice young man who carried their shopping, or a yob who was responsible for all those burglaries last year?
Well, there's not a lot of him left to bury. After a year decomposing in your garden and being poked about by a pathologist in search of every single-celled life form...
James!
Speaking of single-celled life forms...
Oh, James, I can't bear it. It's all too much. Oh, hello, Mrs. Raisin.
Hello?
Yes, Mrs. Friendly, it's a very tragic occasion.
Oh, do call me Dorothy, please. I just can't believe that someone so young and so full of hope should be lying in the ground. Of course, it's not just losing a son, it's discovering that your little boy was a one-man crime wave.
We don't know that. We only know he was buried with stolen goods. No one knows how they got there, and he can't tell us.
I suppose you're right. I was one of the lucky ones. He didn't take anything from my house.
No, he seemed to be quite discerning about who he stole from.
But people forget. It's not just the mother who suffers. Everyone who knew him is affected.
Yes, you do seem awfully affected.
James, can you hold me, please? I think I'm going to faint.
Lord, where exactly should I hold?
Well, you're rather spoiled for choice. Look, we'll get Mrs. Bloxby. She's trained in first aid. Come on, James.
But I'm fainting.
Well, you can lean against the wall then. It's almost as plastered as you are.
Oh, Agatha, don't you think you're being a little harsh?
Oh, don't be so naive, James.
What?
It's an obvious ploy. She wants you to take her in your arms and hold her close.
But she was crying. She was obviously upset.
She wants you to carry her home and give her the kiss of life. All women use tricks like that.
All women?
No, I mean not all of us, obviously. Only the needy ones. Right, let's go and see Mrs. Hicks.
Well, she's just getting into our car.
Oh, well, grab her before someone else does. Oh, dear, she's being besieged by women with cake tins. Mrs. Hicks!
Mrs. Hicks! Mrs. Hicks!
Oh, it's you. I wondered when you'd catch up with me. I suppose we should have a word.
My goodness, the women of Carsley have been busy baking.
Yes. Do take some away with you. They keep coming round with one cake after another, as if it somehow makes up for it.
I'm sure they mean well.
I'm sure they do. Here's your coffee.
Thanks.
I've eaten so much cake this week, I'm starting to look as if I'm pregnant. Oh dear.
There. You have a good cry.
Mrs. Hicks, what did you mean when you said you wondered when we'd catch up with you?
Oh, yes. Be sure your sins will find you out. I knew you'd come for me sooner or later.
Sorry, I don't quite follow.
Well, you two investigate murder. And I committed the murder. I killed my son.
Mrs. What?
Oh, no, not with a knife in the middle of the night. That wasn't me. But I threw him out of home. And that's why it all happened.
And why did you do that?
Why do you think? I knew about his dalliance with his personal tutor. And I told him, well, if this professor cares for you, then he can look after you. I threw him out. But I've no idea what happened to him next.
Mrs. Hicks, you told us your son was doing very well at Oxford and was in a relationship with a woman.
Yes, because I wanted to believe it. I kept thinking perhaps his feelings might just have been a phase. And then we could have made peace one day.
Yes, or if your intolerance was a phase, you could have made peace straight away.
Mrs. Raisin, please don't judge me. I thought a short, sharp shot would make him forget all his funny ideas. But he was much too proud.
I wonder where he got that from. Thank you for the coffee, Mrs. Hicks, but we've got a lot more people to see before your son can rest in peace.
Agatha, don't you think you were a little harsh on her?
Certainly not. She treated her son like a criminal, so he behaved like one. Jeremy was thrown out of home. He may have phoned his professor for some help and advice, but he also needed money. And luckily it was a hot summer's night, so quite a few cottages had their windows open.
Agatha, I think we may have to have a pause in the proceedings. There is the small matter of my Civil War reenactment.
Oh, that thing. Just put them in chainmail and tell them to beat the hell out of each other.
Firstly, royalist soldiers did not wear chainmail. Secondly, I do have to ensure both sides follow authentic military strategy.
Well, you can still help with this.
No, I can't, actually. I don't think Oliver Cromwell solved murder mysteries on the side.
No, I don't suppose so. Men have no idea how to multitask.
Oh, yes, apart from winning 6 major battles, executing the king, establishing democracy and the Commonwealth, the man was quite useless.
Oh, stop whittering, James. Well, if you won't help, I shall break the habit of a lifetime.
Oh, dear. What are you going to do?
I'm going to see Bill Wong with my evidence.
Come in. Mrs. Raisin. Do have a seat, unless you'd rather hide in my filing cabinet.
I know who killed Jeremy Hicks.
Do you? Who was it?
Someone whose house was broken into. I think it was an act of revenge.
Well, you've narrowed it down to a dozen. Everyone on your street except yourself.
Well, I was on holiday. Anyway, I've got a burglar alarm.
Oh, and Mrs. Friendly. You never touched hers.
Oh, that is a pity. I was hoping to put her behind bars.
Do you have anything else you can tell me?
No.
Well, it's not much to go on, but it's an interesting theory. We did search every house at the time of the burglaries, but we were looking for fingerprints, not dead bodies. However, you really haven't given us any new evidence.
Well, we have to start somewhere.
Well, we do, Mrs. Raisin, but you don't. Now, I suggest you go home, have a nice bath, and see if there's anything good on television.
I wouldn't have thought so.
But please leave me in peace. I've got work to do.
Bone of our bone, flesh of our flesh, in Christ. Now is the time to fashion your ploughshare into a sword and march under the flag of king and country. We shall set forth and...
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Hello? I'm on the battlefield.
Would all the Roundheads and the Cavaliers please turn off their mobile phones? We have perfectly good heralds and messenger boys, and we may as well get the use of them.
No, I can't, Doris. Look, I've got to go. Sorry, my liege.
Don't mention it.
Let us set forth and defeat the invader.
James, I think Bill Wong's got a cheek. I mean, if it wasn't for me solving all his murders, he'd be demoted to a traffic warden.
Agatha, do you mind? I'm in the middle of a Civil War reenactment.
Well, you and your friends can carry on killing each other. Don't mind me. Though I'd have thought you'd have grown out of it by your age. I mean...
Out of the way, please. Pike staff coming through. say, it's rather good fun, isn't it?
Your idea of fun is middle-aged men squelching about in chainmail.
How many times do I have to tell you? There was no chainmail in the Stuart period. Mrs. Bloxby, if you can put the cream teas on the trestle table next to the fake blood. There you go.
James, how did you feel when you had your laptop stolen?
Oh, you're still here. Well, if you must know, I was somewhat peeved. Had the first draft of my book on it. And in the end, only the maggots got to read it.
Did you feel so angry you could have killed the person who did it?
Don't be silly. A kick up the backside would have sufficed.
Maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree. No one would kill someone because they stuck their animal vile.
Oh, I don't know. A strange man burst into your house is going to put you on edge. And people do strange things in the heat of battle or the fog of war.
The fog of war! Well, it was the middle of the night, and no one could see a thing.
Agatha, mind the battering ram!
Of course, how stupid!
There is nothing remotely stupid about it. It's completely authentic.
No, I mean me. I've been assuming the killer was a burglary victim, but it has to be the one person who claims she wasn't burgled.
Sorry, I don't follow.
Well, if you had a struggle with an intruder and ended up killing him, the last thing you'd do is call the police and report the burglary. You'd keep quiet about it.
So our killer is likely to be someone who apparently wasn't burgled.
Give the man a coconut.
You weren't burgled.
I was in Madeira.
There's Mrs. Friendly.
Precisely.
Oh, now, hang on a minute. She's the one who invited the Historical Society and the Council to the archaeological dig.
At that stage, the dig was already planned. However, the Historical Society might have advised us to look elsewhere, and the Council could have refused us permission.
So she told them in the hope they'd call it off?
It's a distinct possibility.
Oh, now, hang on. Everything you've got is circumstantial.
It has to be her. She lives next door. Who else could drag a chest through a hole in the hedge?
Well, look, when this battle's finished, we might just pop round there together. But whatever you do, don't go on your own and accuse her.
No, of course not. I'll just have a quiet word.
Once more, the blast of war blows in our ears. Be not afraid. We will never be free until this enemy is defeated.
Well, Mrs. Raisin, I've heard of Cinderella, Rumpelstiltskin and Snow White, but this is one fairy tale too many.
So you deny it?
Of course I deny it. I was very fond of Jeremy. I wouldn't have hurt a hair on his head.
Except that you didn't know whose head it was. It was the middle of the night. He'd just broken in, and Jeremy had an alarming habit of changing hairstyles. You might not even have recognised him.
Of course I'd have recognised him.
In the dark, too scared to turn on the light?
Mrs. Raisin, you really should write detective fiction. But if you go round presenting this as fact, I may have to sue you for slander.
I'll see you in court. You used to keep a knife by the bed, didn't you? It made you feel safe.
I do feel safe, living in the country.
With rural crime on the rise, police stations closing down. So when you hear a noise in the night and don't know if it's a squirrel or a killer, the knife makes you feel safe. But you never ever want to use it. That's the last thing you want to do.
There isn't a knife by my bed. You're welcome to go and have a look.
It isn't there anymore. You washed off the blood, got rid of the weapon, and you buried the body with a trunk full of stolen goods.
Did I, Mrs. Raisin? Did I?
Now is the time to root out the intruder. Spear them with spikes and drag them to the dunghill. Cut off their heads for trophies and leave their trunks for the crows to feed on.
Beg your pardon, Mr. Lacey.
For heaven's sake, I'm trying to choreograph the English Civil War here.
Sorry about that. Any idea where Mrs. Raisin is?
Off on one of her crackpot theories.
Oh, dear. Any idea what that theory might be?
I'm intrigued, Mrs. Raisin. However did you come up with such a preposterous idea?
Well, it's all down to my cat, Chivers.
Chivers?
I've noticed she often disappears in my garden. Then I saw a hole in the hedge leading straight through to yours. Not an enormous hole, but must have been bigger a year ago.
Well, I'm sorry about that. It makes me a very poor gardener, but it doesn't make me a murderer. So, who have you told this outlandish story to?
No one. Oh, just the police.
What?
I'm surprised that bothers you. If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear. If you're guilty, you should give yourself up. You'll get a shorter sentence if you admit to it. And you'll spare Mrs. Hicks the agony of another day not knowing.
Who the hell is that?
Well, there's only one way to find out.
No, It's no one. It's only Jehovah's Witnesses or someone selling sandalwood soap to raise money for the blind.
Would you like me to get it?
Don't move, Mrs. Raisin. They'll soon go away.
They don't appear to be going.
Very persistent people, these Jehovah's Witnesses.
If it's the police and you don't answer, they may take that as an admission of guilt. They might even think you've taken me hostage.
What a ridiculous idea. Now, sit down, Mrs. Raisin. I have a headache, and I'm not in the mood for any more visitors.
Fine.
Well, if they go away, we'll know it wasn't the police, and you've been talking nonsense as per usual, and I suggest that in future you keep your slanderous theories...
Agatha!
James, where are the police?
On their way. But I thought I'd beat them to it with a highly authentic battering ram.
This is my house! You have no right! This is my house!
Dorothy Friendly, I'm arresting you on a charge of murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something you later rely on in court. Anything which you do say will be taken down.
Well, thanks for helping me tidy up.
You're welcome. I enjoy scrubbing fake blood off paving stones.
Well, you'll be pleased to know it was such a success, they wanted to be an annual event.
How thrilling. So, who won?
Oh, well, Oliver Cromwell. It's called historical accuracy, you see. We always have to let him win.
Wouldn't it be nice if just once we could change the script?
Are you talking about Jeremy?
Yes, and Mrs. Friendly. She's going to be sent to prison for a single moment of panic.
Yes, I think you're right. There's more than one person responsible for his death. Unfortunately, it's the one with the knife in her hand who gets arrested.
Time for a cigarette.
What time would that be, then? Between dawn and dusk?
James, I need these. Sometimes they're the only thing that makes sense.
Agatha?
Yes.
Did you mean what you said in Oxford?
About losing weight since I started again? Well, it was a bit of an exaggeration.
No. About me being like the professor, not totally in touch with my feelings. Do you think I'm... what's the phrase? Emotionally repressed.
Well, how can I put this? Yes.
Oh. Well, the thing is, how do you, get in touch with your feelings if you've always tried to keep them under control and then you suddenly decide you need them?
It isn't hard, James. We're all alone here. We're two grown-ups. You can say whatever you want to me.
Right. Well, I just wanted to say, when I knew you were in the house with Mrs. Friendly and Bill told me that I had proof she was the murderer, I've never felt so scared in all my life. Because you're more than just a neighbour. You're the most wonderful friend.
A friend, James?
Yes. A very good friend.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
In Agatha Raisin, Penelope Keith starred as Agatha, and Malcolm Sinclair was James. Linda Barron played Mrs. Hicks, and Joanna Brooks, Mrs. Friendly, with Simon Treves as Professor Wolfe, and Stephen Hogan as D.C. Wong. Agatha Raisin was dramatised by David Semple from the novel by M.C. Beaton, and the producer was Carol Smith. Agatha Raisin by M.C. Beaton, dramatised for radio by David Semple, starring Penelope Keith as Agatha. Episode 5, The Wizard of Evesham.
Right then, Mrs. Wendell, once more, from the top, and this time, don't forget to breathe. The audience won't enjoy it half as much if you're blue in the face.
Mrs. Bloxby, I do know how to inhale, thank you.
Well then. Now, ready, Mrs. Asquith? Off we go.
On a tree by a river, a little tom tree. Sang willow, did willow.
Hello, Mrs. Raisin.
Mrs. Bloxby, you're not doing anything important, are you?
Well, I am actually rehearsing the Gilbert and Sullivan Society at the moment.
Oh, that's all right then. I need your advice on a rather embarrassing problem.
Of course. I do like your hat, by the way. Are you off to Ascot?
No, I'm not. The hat is there to cover up the problem. Take a look.
Oh, yes, that's it's an interesting hairdo.
I think, Mrs. Bloxby, it's a hair don't. I appear to have turned into a purple badger.
Whatever happened?
Well, since moving to the village, I've let my hair go a little. I mean, where can you get a decent haircut round here?
Well, it's Mrs. Simmons' salon by the off-licence.
Best place for it. Anyway, last week I decided I was no longer glad to be grey. So I went and bought some permanent colour.
Well, yes, Mrs. Chumley sells it at the chemist.
And trading standards really should be notified. This was supposed to be warm caramel. It's more like cold spotted dick.
Yes, it does seem somewhat mottled. Why don't you show it to the Gilbert and Sullivan Society? They might know what to do.
No, thank you. I refuse to be laughed at by the pirates of Penzance. Do you know any good hairdressers within a 20-mile radius?
Well, there is a place over at Evesham. It's called Orlando's.
Orlando's?
Yes, Mr. Orlando he's such a very talented man. He's a wizard, really. I only go once a year because it's so expensive, but it's a wonderful place. Such a happy atmosphere. And the things people say in his salon.
Hello? Oh, thanks for phoning, Danny. I've had such a day of it. I mean, you wouldn't believe what's just pitched up at the salon. Have you ever seen The Bride of Frankenstein?
Excuse me.
Oh, dear, I think she's just risen from the grave. Hold on.
Look, am I going to be waiting much longer?
Mr. Orlando will be with you as soon as he can.
It's just I'm feeling a bit self-conscious sitting in the window like a Dutch prostitute.
Well, we could always put a bag over your head like a sex offender. Can I get your coffee?
I suppose so. Black, 2 sugars.
Right. So, anyway, I'm flying off to Torremolinos to meet Simon's mother just as soon as I've had my tennis reaction. Would you like any coffee, ladies?
No, thank
Not
you,
for me.
Bobby.
So where was I, Marge? Oh, right, yes, right. She's got this job as an au pair, right, over in Blockley.
Oh, that's a very nice village. You get a better class of person there.
Oh, well, that's what I thought. But then, right, on the first day, the little girl she's looking after says, "Can we put on some of Mummy's dressing up clothes?"
Oh, how sweet.
Oh, no, it isn't. You'll never guess what Mummy had at the back of her wardrobe.
What?
Whips, like chains, and a catsuit of synthetic material.
No.
So now we know how she can afford the house prices in Blockley.
Oh. Excuse me, ladies. Coffee coming through. Your coffee, madam.
Look, is it going to be much longer? I've been waiting so long, the clothes in these magazines are coming back into fashion.
Someone's having a bad hair day.
Someone is fed up with being ignored while you yak on your mobile about trips to Torremolinos. Do you have any idea who I am?
No. Oh, should I?
I am a customer.
I'll see if he's ready yet.
Goodness, Marjorie, tourist season gets earlier every year.
Oh, I know.
Ah, Mrs. Raisin, I'm so sorry to... Oh, my word. What have we here?
What we have is purple hair. I feel like a poodle with alopecia.
Right. And may I ask which lunatic did this to your hair?
That would be the lunatic you're talking to.
Oh, dear. If it was anybody else, you could have sued for damages. Now, why, oh, why would such a beautiful woman do such a terrible thing to her hair? But don't worry, Mrs. Raisin. Put yourself completely in my hands.
Hello, Chivers. Yes, it's me. Not my devastatingly attractive younger sister. I've just been to see the wizard. And he's certainly done something wonderful with my hair. Oh, I was so fed up with all those grey streaks appearing.
Agatha.
James.
I saw you coming up the garden path. Thought I'd pop in.
Oh, is it anything in particular?
No, I just wanted to ask, what are you doing tomorrow evening? Because there's a restaurant just opened in Evesham, Les Quatre Cents Coups.
I'm guessing this might be a French establishment.
Mais oui, c'est vrai. Et voulez-vous manger avec moi?
What on earth for?
Do we need a reason?
No, I just wondered if there was some special occasion.
Well, you must know, it's 3 years since I came to this village. 3 years since your car crashed into mine and you dragged me into a web of murder and mayhem.
Oh, Ooh, an anniversary dinner.
Indeed. We'll drink a toast to happy times and homicide.
I'll let you know as soon as I know. All right, don't worry. Excuse me. Ladies, now, if I could have your attention, please.
Excuse me, could someone open the window? It's awfully hot.
Oh, perhaps Mrs. Wendell, will you?
Oh, I'm not sure I shall go on tiptoes with my heart, Mama, but... there you are.
Thank you. Now, as you all know, we have the annual Gilbert and Sullivan concert next month in Tidlington, but we still don't have any interval refreshments. Now, I know most of you are actually in the concert, and it's a bit much to expect 3 little maids to rustle up savoury snacks, but is there anyone who can lend a hand?
Well, I could make some sausage rolls.
You, Mrs. Raisin?
Yes, me, Mrs. Wendell. I'm not just a scary face.
Well, I hope there won't be a repeat of last year. You promised to make fairy cakes, but they all came from a shop in London.
You get a better class of fairy at Fornham and Mason's. Do you want me to run the stall as well?
Oh, no, Mrs. Cheney's doing that. Just drop them round here the night before.
Oh, thank heavens that I don't have to trek all the way to Tidlington.
Hold on. I hope you are actually coming to this concert. I mean, one doesn't do it for the glory, but one does hope for some support from one's neighbours.
Mrs. Wendell, I wouldn't miss it for all the tea and titty-poo.
Oh, good. I mean, I don't claim to be Kiri Takanawa.
Just as well.
But I do enjoy my 15 minutes of fame.
Yes, though with you it always seems so much longer.
Right, well, that's settled. I'll go and get this evening's refreshments. A nice grapefruit and poppy seed gatto.
Your hair looks nice, Mrs. Raisin.
Thank you. I had it done at Orlando's in Evesham.
Did you? Oh.
Is something wrong?
Oh, no, it's just not a place I'd go to.
Why ever not?
One hears stories.
What sort of stories?
Oh, I don't know that I can say. I wouldn't want you to think of me as a gossip.
Oh, don't bother telling me then. It probably isn't all that interesting.
Well, I went there a year ago, and I didn't care for the man. He seemed to have wandering hands. I cut my own hair now.
Yes, I thought you did.
You'll have difficulty keeping that hairstyle. I mean, it's such a hot night. One is inclined to toss about in bed.
Well, I'll just use some extra hairspray. It's hardly going to lose its shape overnight.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Raisin. Oh, dear. Another bad hair day.
No, I'm going to a fancy dress party as a hedgehog.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Orlando will be happy to drop everything for you.
What's that supposed to mean?
Nothing. Let's just say he has his favourites. I'll go and get him.
Mrs. Raisin. Oh, dear. You have had a rough night, haven't you?
I'm afraid so. And that rather beautiful hairstyle you gave me is dyed.
You don't need a hairdresser. You need someone to tuck you in at night. Have a seat in my new chair.
Oh, good God, what was that?
Sorry, I should have warned you. It vibrates. A little bit of soothing massage.
Whatever will they think of next, and why?
I'll have this sorted in no time, Mrs. Raisin.
Thank you, Mr. Orlando.
Oh, it's John, please.
John, is there another salon opening over the road?
Salon? Is that what you call it? That is an extremely grotty barber's. £5 haircuts. They wouldn't know the difference between hairdressing and sheep shearing.
Sorry, I mean barbers.
Yes. You have lovely, thick hair, Mrs. Raisin, but you really have let it go a little.
Well, that's the thing with living in the country. You're miles from a decent salon. Who do I need to impress out here in the sticks?
Oh, so there's no Mr. Raisin then?
Oh, yes, there is, but he wouldn't know the difference between a Marcel wave and a mullet.
Oh, really? Some husbands don't know how lucky they are.
Your credit card, monsieur. I hope everything was to your satisfaction.
Yes, thank you. Marvellous.
Oh, good.
No, James, it wasn't marvellous.
Actually, no, second thought, it's not marvellous.
When we finally found the steak, buried under a bed of rocket, it had the taste and texture of shoe leather. The wine was more like lighter fuel, which is all the more annoying when you're not allowed to smoke. And would you please tell your chef there is a subtle difference between petit pois and mushy peas?
Although I have to say the creme anglaise was a jolly good effort.
I will pass on your comments to the chef. Thank you for coming and for leaving.
Well, bang goes the entente cordiale.
Oh, dear. This is getting to be a habit. You take me for a meal and I end up eating the waiter.
Are you ever going to mellow with age?
Only when the world stops being so annoying.
Must be terribly tiresome, particularly when you're always bending over backwards to be reasonable.
James!
Right, back to the car.
Oh, hold on. Can we use another exit?
Why, whatever's the matter?
Mrs. Raisin, we must stop meeting like this. And this must be your...
This is my husband, James.
Oh, yes, I'm her husband, James.
Well, talk about a small world. I just came to drop off some business cards. But would the pair of you care to join me in a drink?
Oh, well, of course, Mr.
Orlando.
Mr. Orlando, it's always such a pleasure to meet my wife's friends. Life with my darling wife is always so full of surprises.
Well, I'll just drop these off to the manager. I'll see you in the bar.
James, I am so sorry.
Oh, well, that's all right, then. I've got nothing against arranged marriage. I'll try anything once. But it's nice to be told that you've been married.
He's been pursuing me. I had to tell him I was married. It was the only way to get rid of him.
What do you mean, pursuing you?
Oh, well, you know, making advances, personal remarks. It just got a bit creepy.
So long as he doesn't pretend to be married to you. That would be really creepy.
So, what can I get you?
I'll have a very dry martini.
And I'll have a very bitter lemon.
1 dry martini, 1 bitter lemon, and 1 gin and tonic, please.
Certainly, sir.
So, Mr. Raisin.
What? Oh, yeah, you mean me? Yes. Yes?
How long have you two been married?
26 years.
25, 26? Any advance on 26?
Sorry, after the first 2 decades, it all sorts of blurs into one.
I expect your wife's told you all about me?
Actually, no, that's one of several things she's neglected to mention.
This is Mr. Orlando, from Orlando's in the High Street.
I'm responsible for your wife's new look. Of course, it's easy creating a beautiful hairstyle when you have a perfect English rose underneath it.
Sorry, you lost me there. Oh, you mean the English rose I married? Ha, yes, well, I always have been a keen gardener. Oh, look, it's Mrs. Wendell from the Gilbert and Sullivan Society.
This whole evening is turning into a comic opera.
Hello, Mrs. Wendell, would you like to join us? That's me, Mr. Raisin, and my English rose wife.
Oh, that's odd. She's run off.
Sorry, is this someone you know?
Yes, we're in the Carsley Ladies' Society, Mrs. Wendell. Hold on. You used to cut her hair, didn't you?
By the look of her hair, I think she goes to the sheep-shearing salon over the road.
But I thought she said you were...
No, Mrs. Wendell. Doesn't ring any bells. So, do all of your friends head for the hills whenever they bump into you?
Yes, it must be something to do with her being an English rose. Some people just don't like the prickles.
Thanks for backing me up, James.
Always a pleasure, darling. Just for future reference, how long have we been married?
25 years. We first met when I was driving to work. You were at the bus stop, and I accidentally splashed a puddle over you.
Oh, yes, I remember. I was soaked to the skin, but you dried me off by tying me to the roof rack. Any children yet?
Just the 2. Alison, who's a huge success in advertising, and John, who's a complete drip of a librarian.
Good old John. He's so lucky to have his dusty old books to hide away in.
Speaking of hiding, did you see the way Mrs. Wendell ran out of the restaurant? She looked absolutely terrified.
Perhaps she'd seen the prices.
I think there's more to it than that. I can't work out if she's scared of you, me, or the hairdresser. Let's go and see her tomorrow.
Oh, well, beats what most married couples do at the weekend. Off to the garden centre, putting up shells.
No, Mrs. Raisin, I'm afraid you're making mountains out of molehills, as is your wont. No, I had a sudden attack of irritable bowel syndrome, that's all.
Strange that it came on the moment you saw us.
Well, it's nothing personal. I mean, I don't think I'm allergic to you.
Very glad to hear it.
Oh, no, James, I could consume you in large quantities. But whether it was the hot night or the smell of the food, I just felt a little queasy in the colon.
Of course, it might not have been us you were alarmed by. It could have been Mr. Orlando.
Who?
My hairdresser.
Oh, that Mr. Orlando.
2 weeks ago, you tried to warn me away from him. Then last night, when you came face to face with him, you ran away in terror.
What it is to have a vivid imagination. Still, when one has so little else in one's life... I stopped going to Mr. Orlando because the man couldn't keep his hands to himself, though I can see that would appeal to some women.
Mrs. Wendell, if there is anything, I promise we'll treat it in the strictest confidence.
Well, you might. But I'm not so sure about the Agatha Raisin Broadcasting Corporation. However, I have nothing to say, and a number of Gilbert and Sullivan arias to practice.
Thank you.
Thanks. Goodbye.
She doesn't know her arias from her elbow.
Well, we didn't get very much out of her.
On the contrary, when people clam up on a particular subject, it means there's something to hide. I think Mr. Orlando may have spurned her. Or something worse.
Oh, dear, she's got that look in her eye. Perhaps I shall go and spend the day with my imaginary son John at his imaginary library.
He could even be blackmailing her. I mean, the things people say in that salon will keep him in styling moves for eternity.
But you've absolutely no evidence.
Then I'll get some. I'm going to have a little fling with him, in spite of my insanely jealous husband, and if he threatens to reveal it, I'll have everything on tape.
Agatha, you don't know what you're getting into.
Oh, for heaven's sake, he's only a hairdresser.
Yes, indeed. And so was Sweeney Todd.
If you'd like to go through, Mr. Orlando will see you now, Mrs. Raisin.
Thank you, Bobby.
Agatha, do sit down.
Oh, thank you.
Is it just me, or are you forever beating a path to my door at the moment?
Right now, it's the only place I feel welcome.
Oh, well, what can I do for you? Wash and blow dry?
You can cut it all off for all I care. What's the use of having a beautiful hairstyle if nobody notices it?
Oh, dear. I don't think your hair is really the problem here.
It's James. He's off on one of his regimental reunions again.
Well, isn't it nice to have the place to yourself? I mean, when the cat's away...
Oh, it's not just that. It's just... Nowadays, he seems so cold and distant.
Yes. He seemed a bit distant when I saw him, almost on another planet.
So it looks like another night listening to the moral maze with a cup of cold cocoa.
You know what you need?
What?
You need to treat yourself to a few little luxuries. Pamper yourself. A bit of aromatherapy, massage...
The only aromatherapy I get these days is the smell of cigarettes and coffee.
Well, I live just around the corner from a health spa. They do all kinds of hydrotherapy, Indian head massage...
I always thought you were a bit of a health fanatic. I noticed the vitamin pills next to your conditioners.
That's to keep my energy levels up. And believe me, with some of my dreary customers, I need it.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful place. How much does it cost?
Oh, I can get you in for free on my membership. So, if you're footloose and fancy-free this evening...
Thank you for the most wonderful evening.
You're welcome.
I can still feel my skin tingling from that Dead Sea mud.
Of course, the night doesn't have to end just yet. I could pop in for a nightcap.
Some other time, John. That would be lovely, but let's not rush things.
Sure. Which number are you?
Number 18.
Hold on a sec.
John, I've told you, I don't want the neighbours to see us together.
It's not that. There's a strange man lurking behind your laburnum tree.
That's just the wheelie bin.
Then why is your wheelie bin wearing a cardigan?
There's nothing there. It's just flickering shadows.
Are you sure?
99.9%.
It's the 0.1 I'm worried about. I'll walk you to the door.
All right, but no further. There you are. I told you there was nothing there. It's just... Oh!
Just who the hell is this, Agatha?
It's your husband.
What? Oh, yes, so it is.
Sir, this is what you get up to when I'm looking after my poor disabled mother. Remember what I tell you. If I catch you with another man, I'll kill myself. And kill him. I mean, obviously, I'll have to kill him first, but you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Mr. Raisin, I assure you...
It's you.
This is your fancy man, Johnny Crimping Shirt. You're a disgrace to your profession. And you, get inside, woman. I'm going to settle this man to man.
Mr. Raisin, I know how this must look, but I assure you I have no designs at all on your wife.
What? Why the hell not? What's the matter with her?
There's nothing the matter with her, but I've only just got divorced and I'm not looking for someone else. I bumped into Agatha at my health club and I offered to give her a lift home.
It's true, James, honestly.
Right. Well, if you say so. But I'm warning you. If you ever lay a finger on this goddess, I'll tear you to pieces with my bare hands. Now, get inside, you shameless husk.
Stop pushing me! Oh!
You seem to have dropped your tape recorder.
Oh, thank you.
Good night.
Well, I think that went rather well.
Do get inside now, James, before I'm accused of husband battering.
Agatha, is there something the matter?
What do you think you were doing? It was all going so well, and then some lunatic leaps out of my laburnum tree.
Ah, that was the element of surprise. I thought it might help the verisimilitude if you could actually see how jealous I was.
Well, God save us from men thinking. And you're about as good at acting as King Herod was at babysitting.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I'm a bit new to this insane jealousy lark.
That wasn't insane jealousy. It was just insane.
Agatha, why are you so angry?
I am angry because I've just spent 2 hours in some prisoner of war drama where people actually think that carrot juice is a drink. Then suddenly I come home and I'm in the world's worst bedroom farce.
So, they didn't have nicotine therapy then at the health farm?
If only. And now he's seen the tape recorder, so we're finished.
Not necessarily. You could say you use it as a sort of personal organizer.
Or to help you learn your lines for Rum for Your Wife.
Well, did you actually find out anything?
Not a lot, though he certainly has expensive tastes. Wrapping yourself in Dead Sea mud doesn't come cheap. And whilst I lay there like a depressed hippopotamus, he made subtle inquiries about what kind of car I drove, which parts of the world I'd visited.
Doesn't necessarily make him a blackmailer.
Oh, no? Perhaps he's a philanthropist who thinks I need a few quid. Well, I let slip a few incriminating secrets. If he is a blackmailer, I'll be hearing from him soon. I know. I'll buy him a present. His sort are always won over by some pretty bauble.
Agatha, I really rather you didn't.
Why not? What's the matter?
While you were gone, someone slid a letter under your door, made up of words cut out of different newspapers.
Good God. I've gone from a Whitehall farce to a gangster movie. What does it say?
It tells you to back off. I mean, what do you think it says? Don't forget Bin Men Tuesday.
Let's have a look. To stay alive and stay healthy, stay away from Mr. Orlando.
So maybe it's time for you to wash that man right out of your hair.
Oh, no. I should get back in his vibrating chair as soon as possible.
Oh, Mrs. Raisin. I'm not sure if Mr. Orlando can see you today. I mean, several of his regular customers have turned up, and I don't know if he'll be able to...
Mrs. Raisin.
John, I've got you a little something.
Oh. What's this in aid of?
To say sorry for the other night.
Oh, that's really sweet. I wish Simon
Thank you, Bobby. Haven't you got a floor to sweep?
Oh, your degree in staff motivation really paid off.
Cufflinks.
With blue sapphires to match your eyes. Like a kingfisher in flight.
Oh, I'm lost for words.
That's all right. I get enough of those from my husband, but I prefer a man of action.
Well, we will have to be a bit more discreet. Perhaps we can meet somewhere private later.
That would be lovely.
Let's get your hair done. So, what would you like me to do for you?
Oh, the usual.
Oh, no. You may be used to getting the usual, but with me, you'll always get something special.
All right, then. Let's have a bit of your wizardry.
That's more like it. But I did have rather a busy night, so I do need my vitamin pills. Now, Bobby's really busy. Let me wash your hair. Is that about right for you?
Yes, lovely, thanks.
Good. So, your husband wasn't at a regimental dinner then, was he?
No. He'd gone to stay with his mother, only his car broke down.
Oh, naughty, naughty. Still, if he will leave a very beautiful woman unattended, it's hardly surprising that I...
John, what's the matter?
Nothing. I think I need the bathroom.
Bobby? Bobby, is he all right?
Oh, he'll be fine. Probably just had a dodgy kebab last night.
Dodgy veggie burger, more like. The colour just seemed to drain out of his face. He was looking a bit pale when I got here.
He always was a sensitive flower.
Shut up and give me a towel. What's happened to him?
Well, I don't know, do I? I'm not a mind reader.
Ask if he's okay.
What did your last slave die of? Mr. Orlando? Mr. Orlando, are you going to be much longer? This customer's waiting.
Right, you've got to break the door down.
I'm not tearing my Dolce & Gabbana.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Give me the fire extinguisher.
Hello, Mr. Orlando. Would you like a glass of water?
No, he bloody wouldn't. Go and get him an ambulance.
Oh, right.
Hello.
James, it's me.
Agatha.
Mr. Orlando has fallen ill.
Well, what do you want me to do? Send a get-well card?
I mean, really ill. Eyes bulging like a squid, white as a sheet, almost in a coma.
I see. Well, where are you now?
I'm at his house.
What?
As soon as he collapsed, I took the keys out of his pocket. Well, I mean, it was the obvious thing to do. I had to find out what his secret was.
Agatha, are you mad? No need to answer. Rhetorical question.
But, James, this could be my only chance. I'm sure there's something seedy going on.
Now, hold on. I think we've got a bad line. Do you hear crackling?
Yes, I do. That's funny. I can smell burning.
Get out of the house! Get out of the house now!
In Agatha Raisin, Penelope Keith starred as Agatha, and Malcolm Sinclair was James. Mrs. Bloxby was played by Liza Sadovey, and Mrs. Wendell by Tina Gray, with John Cummings as Mr. Orlando and Matthew Carter as Bobby. Agatha Raisin was dramatised by David Semple from the novel by M.C. Beaton, and the producer was Carol Smith. Agatha Raisin by M.C. Beaton, dramatised for radio by David Semple, starring Penelope Keith as Agatha. Episode 6, The Moment of Truth.
Come on.
Hello?
Roy, it's me.
Aggie, how are things in the land of cream teas and crochet work?
You remember that hairdresser I was telling you about?
The one who you thought was blackmailing his customers.
I think he's dead.
Oh, Aggie, not another one.
I'm afraid so. Some women have the power to drive men wild. I have a gift for making them drop down dead.
So how did this one end up in that great salon in the sky?
Well, he was about to cut my hair when he suddenly keeled over. I had to phone the ambulance. I mean, I don't know for sure if he's dead, but he won't be running the marathon this year.
Oh, poor Aggie. Is your hair all right?
Do you have no compassion? A man could be dead. My hair isn't really relevant.
Sorry I spoke. So what did you do then?
Well, while the ambulance was on its way, I went and broke into his house.
Well, there's compassion for you. I'm amazed you didn't become a nurse.
Well, I had to find out if he really was a blackmailer. Anyway, I was in his house going through his things when somebody else broke in.
Honestly, you wait all day for a break-in, then two come along at once. Who was it? Jehovah's burglars?
It isn't funny. Whoever it was, and I didn't see them, set fire to the house.
Did you manage to get out in one piece?
Of course. Do I sound fragmented?
You really should take up a less dangerous hobby, like recreational drugs or binge drinking.
And that's what James said. I ran round to his house. I was still shaking, and told him what had happened. He said I should go home, have a shower, and work out why I valued my life so little.
I think the silver-haired Adonis has a point.
Thank you, Roy. Hold on. What happens if the police find out I was in the house? They'll think I committed the arson.
That's a point. They can trace your DNA from the tiniest flake of dandruff.
I do not do dandruff.
Footprints, then.
That's a point. I better burn my shoes.
Aggie, I don't think it's going to make a lot of...
Thanks for the chat. Bye. Oh, out of the way, Chivers. You may be beautiful, but you're not inflammable. Oh, honestly, what is the point of firelighters if it takes 10 minutes to actually light them? Hold on! I'll just be a minute! Oh, Chivers, are you a cat or an obstacle course?
Mrs. Raisin?
DC Wong.
Oh, DC Wong, is it? You normally call me Bill. Unless you're feeling guilty about something.
What on earth would I feel guilty about?
You tell me. Hello, Chivers. I see you've made yourself comfortable by the fire. Just what you need in a beautiful summer's day.
Is it warm out? I wouldn't know. I think I'm going down with something. That's why I've been at home, resting, all afternoon.
Except for your 2-hour appointment with John Orlando.
Oh, that. Yes, I'd forgotten that.
Strange thing to forget, when it was you who called the ambulance after he collapsed.
Well, it was all such a shock. I don't want to think about him. How is he?
He's seriously ill in Mercester Hospital. It looks as if he's... Hold on.
Yes?
You've got a pair of shoes on that fire.
I was running out of coal.
Burning shoes, eh? I guess I'll never get used to your London ways.
Bill, you've never actually been married, have you?
I haven't tied the knot as yet.
Well, when you do, you'll discover women often get dissatisfied with their image very suddenly.
So they set fire to their shoes. I've got a lot to look forward to. Well, it's funny seeing a fire, because just after John Orlando collapsed in Ceylon, someone set fire to his house.
Really?
Yes, they did. And 2 women were seen running away from the crime scene.
2 women?
They seem surprised.
No! You just don't think of arsonists going round in pairs.
They weren't together. One ran out the back door and one out the front. And I'm just wondering, did one of these women run all the way back to Carsley and set fire to her shoes?
Me? You surely don't think I'm responsible.
Responsible, no. A bloody-minded, yes.
Bill.
What did you do after you phoned the ambulance?
I ran to my car.
And then drove home?
All the way home.
And set fire to your shoes?
Yes.
I hope you're telling the truth, Agatha. Even if it does break the habit of a lifetime.
James, can we talk?
Agatha, you may not have noticed the dust sheets and the smell of paint, but I am in the middle of redecorating.
Fine, I'll solve this mystery myself. You can stay here and watch paint dry.
It isn't just painting. I have several jobs pending. I've just drawn up a to-do list.
Oh, a to-do list. I am impressed. Some people have a life, others have a to-do list.
Very well, I'll put my brush down then, shall I?
I know who started the fire.
Oh, yes. Who was it?
A woman.
Could you be a bit more specific? I mean, was it Germaine Greer or was it Her Majesty the Queen?
I think it was one of John's customers. Whoever it was must have seen him collapse in the salon, then went and burnt his house down.
Goodness, if I don't like my haircut, I just refuse to leave a tip.
My theory is John was blackmailing a customer, but she managed to poison him, possibly put something nasty in the vitamin pills he kept by his chair. And when the poison took effect, she ran off to burn his house down and get rid of any dirt he may have had on her.
So we're looking for a woman with wet hair and a smell of petrol.
I'm going to see John at Mercester General Hospital. Are you coming?
Well, I thought you said he was seriously ill.
He'll have to come out of his coma eventually.
Oh, good. 1 pip on the life support machine for yes, 2 bips for no.
This will be the place. High dependency unit.
Agatha, how are we going to get into him? I mean, the only connection is he's your hairdresser and he's in no condition to give a shampoo and set.
I don't know. Oh, hang on. Why don't you steal a white coat and pretend to be a consultant? I'm sure you could pull it off.
Are you insane?
Oh, sorry, it isn't on your to-do list.
Excuse me. Can I help you?
Oh, yes. We wanted to inquire about a patient, Mr. John Orlando.
Are you relatives?
I'm his sister, Janet.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We didn't know you had a sister. But surely the police told you.
Told us what?
Would you like to come this way, Mrs.
He's dead, isn't he?
I'm so sorry. We did everything we could for him.
Oh, John! Oh, no! Oh, dear!
Darling, let me hold you. You know, in my arms sort of thing.
Just take me home.
Oh.
Excuse me, we do need to have all your contact details.
James, get in the lift.
Terribly sorry. Mustache.
Excuse me.
Sorry, my wife's in a bit of state. They were always very close, the 2 of them, Janet and John.
Quite a lot of women here today. I wonder if they're paying their last respects or checking that he's definitely dead.
Anyone you remember from the salon?
So hard to tell without their curlers in. Now, Bobby, I know. He was John's receptionist, sweeper-upper, and general pain in the...
Hello?
salon.
Hello, Mrs. Raisin. How are you?
As well as one can be at a funeral.
Hasn't really sunk in yet. We've been rushed off our feet the past few days.
Is the salon still going, then?
Oh, no, it's all boarded up. I'm working at Eve's over the road.
Oh, yes. The £5 salon. John used to call it the sheep dip and shearing station.
That was being kind. The woman who owns it's a slave driver. Oh, I do miss John. Anyway, got to go. There's a lot of my old dears here. I want to persuade them to come to Eve's instead. Ciao for now.
Ciao.
Goodbye. Good Lord, don't look now.
What is it?
You know that feeling you had as a child when you run into the head boy at the tuck shop when you're meant to be doing prep?
We obviously went to very different schools. Oh, I see.
Afternoon, folks.
Hello, Bill.
Well, there's a thing. Seeing you two at Mr. Orlando's funeral.
Well, that's something you'll never understand, the relationship between a woman and her hairdresser.
No. Like I'll never understand why some women burn their shoes. Anyway, why don't I give you a lift home? Just for a change, I'm going to take you two for a ride.
Can I just say, I only came along to keep an eye on Agatha, and I wouldn't dream of interfering in police business.
You little sneak.
Can I interrupt your private chinwag and ask what I have to do to keep you two at home? I mean, should I buy you a jigsaw? Would that help?
There's no law against going to funerals.
Or is turning up in intensive care, pretending to be relatives?
Oh, dear, yeah. Point taken.
There's one thing that could stop us interfering.
Oh, yes? Amaze me.
Why don't you tell us what you know? Then we wouldn't need to snoop.
I admire your cheek. Well, I'll tell you what I know, if you do the same. It'll be in all the papers tomorrow, so this is your hot-off-the-press exclusive.
Hold the front page.
Mr. Orlando died due to ricin poisoning.
Ricin? Isn't that what killed that Bulgarian chap back in the 70s? You know, shot with an umbrella gun?
That's the stuff. It's very popular with terrorists. Anyone can manufacture it if they do a bit of homework.
And I think I know how the poison got to him.
Oh, yes?
He kept a bottle of vitamin pills by his chair. He used to swallow them while he was working.
Our forensics are looking into it. They also know he was a blackmailer.
I told you, James, I told you.
He had affairs with a couple of women and threatened to tell their husbands unless he got some hush money. It was a very nasty piece of work.
And who inherits his money?
They left every single penny to a cat's home. He did have a wife, but they had an acrimonious divorce. She didn't even come to the funeral.
So where is the wife?
Well, she lives in London. Didn't even know where her husband was these days.
It must come as a bit of a shock to her, finding out what her husband was really like.
Oh, no, you very soon learn when you've married a bad egg.
Right. Well, I should drop you off here. And I'll be calling round later with a 5,000-piece jigsaw.
Well, Chivers, he may have been a very nasty man, but he did leave all his money to nice little pussycats.
Yes, Chivers, and that makes you our number one suspect.
She's our only suspect at the moment. If only we knew the names of everyone who was in his salon when he collapsed. I wish I'd stolen his appointment book.
Yes, well, you can't commit every crime on the statute books. You have to leave something for the teenagers. And maybe they haven't served an ASBO on you.
Hold on. The killer didn't have to be in John's salon. She could have been over the road at Eve's. She'd have seen the ambulance, realised the poison had worked, and then gone off and burnt his house down.
Agatha, if this mystery is like looking for a needle in a haystack, you've just succeeded in piling on a few more bails.
But at least we can get hold of her appointment book, find out who was in her salon.
It'll be 25 women whom we've never heard of. Then what do? See if one of the names is an anagram of murderer?
I think it might be someone we know. Someone who lives in this village.
Don't tell me. Mrs. Bloxby, taking revenge for a rather unpleasant perm.
I think it was someone who was terrified of John, who ran away from him when we bumped into her in a restaurant.
Not Mrs. Wendell.
She seems to have been avoiding me the past few weeks. I wonder why.
Well, she has been a bit busy with her one-woman show, Gilbert and Sullivan's Women. I suspect the one woman refers to the idiot who went to see it.
That wasn't a one-woman show. I thought the whole village was involved.
In the beginning, it was Gilbert and Sullivan with a cast of thousands, but after 6 weeks working with her, it became a one-woman show.
Well, that explains why we haven't seen her. Anyway, I don't suppose she's capable of murder.
The ghosts of Gilbert and Sullivan might beg to differ.
Oh, no!
Sorry, no more jokes.
It's not that. I just remembered I promised to organise the catering for a wretched show. She'll be furious that I forgot.
Yes, and she might be mildly annoyed that you're accusing her of murder.
All right. I'll just let the whole thing drop. Though I'll just find out if she was in the salon.
Well, Chivers, looks as though you're going to be alone again. And as for my to-do list, well, they're just going to have to bury me with it.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Raisin. Oh, and you're that, what's his name?
That's right, but you can call me, Mr. What's-his-name.
Hello, Bobby. Bobby, I don't mean to be rude, but you don't seem to have many customers.
No, it's quiet today. And tomorrow, and the day after that.
Bobby, will you stop gassing on your mobile and get that floor cleaned? Oh, I didn't realise we had customers.
Sorry, we're not actually customers as such. We just wanted to make an inquiry.
Oh, yes.
Well, a friend of ours had the most wonderful haircut. It takes years off her. But she's refusing to say where she had it done, and I'm desperate to find out.
What has that got to do with me?
Oh, she could have had it done here.
Oh, yes. I suppose so.
I've got a photograph of her here from a recent production of the Mikado. Of course, she doesn't usually have a kimono on or the knitting needles in her hair.
Let's have a look. Gwendolyn Wendell has them rolling in the aisles. No, she doesn't ring any bells.
She would have had it done on Saturday, 1st of July.
Oh, well, of course, I wasn't here then. The shop opened in June, but I only moved in last week. If you like, I'll check my appointment book.
Oh, thank you.
Has there ever been a worse form of musical torture than the panpipes? I've half a mind to phone Amnesty International.
Perhaps that explains the absence of customers.
Yes, coming here would be like sitting in a lift being tormented with curling tongs.
Yes, you're right. She came in here on 1st of July at 2:30. Oh, that helps.
Thank you. Now, that is very, very interesting.
Lacey, Mrs. Raisin. Come in and put your feet up on my Algerian poufs.
Well, thank you.
Mrs. Wendell, can I just say I am so sorry I forgot your savouries. As soon as I got to Tiddlington Village Hall, I had a sinking feeling.
The absence of sausage rolls was a sad loss in an otherwise exquisite theatrical experience. Did you at least enjoy the concert?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, it was a musical extravaganza unlike any other.
Where did you sit?
Somewhere near the back.
And which bits did you like the most?
Oh, the Gilbert and Sullivan bits.
It was all Gilbert and Sullivan. The name of the show was Gwendolyn Wendell Sings Gilbert and Sullivan.
Well, then I enjoyed all of it.
You're too kind.
Mrs. Wendell, apart from the concert, we really haven't seen you around recently, which is strange in a small village.
Well, there is a reason I've been staying indoors, but I don't see why I should tell you.
We're extremely keen to find out.
Oh, well then. I've been having some rather unpleasant side effects from my hormone replacement therapy, if you really want to know.
Actually, perhaps we didn't.
Oh, I read about that. Apparently a lot of women get hair on their chin.
There's no need to draw attention to it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean you. I just meant
Mrs. Wendell, we were rather surprised you didn't make it to John Orlando's funeral.
Well, why should I? The man gave me one bad haircut a year ago. I don't think I owe him a wreath.
No, of course. You go to the place over the road.
What?
Eve's. That's where you have it done.
No, I don't. I cut my own hair. I've never heard of Eve's.
That's strange, because you went there on Saturday the 1st of July. You sat facing the street, and at 3 o'clock you saw an ambulance arrive, and John Orlando was carried into it. So this was your golden opportunity to destroy every bit of dirt he had on you. So you ran from the salon, and you set fire to his house.
Mrs. Raisin, I've said it before, but you really should write crime fiction. Though it's unfortunate you share your name with the greatest writer who ever lived, and a type of dried fruit.
Oh, for God's sake, stop pretending. I was there. I saw you do it.
Mrs. Raisin, I have my reasons for hating John Orlando, but I don't think you can accuse me of his murder. On the 1st of July, I was, in fact, giving my all at Tidlington Village Hall in the Gilbert and Sullivan show, and you were supposed to be in the audience.
Oh, I think when we said we were in the audience, what we really meant to say was, we weren't.
I guessed as much. Now, will you leave, please? I have a souffle in my Aga in imminent danger of deflation.
She knows more than she's saying, but for some reason she won't let us in.
Indeed, not by the hair on her chinny chin chin.
Look, I didn't mean to draw attention to it. Anyway, she'll thank me for it one day.